Hey everyone, Happy New Year! Just before the video starts, I want to give a little context as well as a wee update. It has been a while since my last upload, as this one's been sitting on the back burner for a bit. A couple of the early segments we'll be covering, in fact, were actually written and recorded months ago, as this video began production all the way back in January. So while the info should still be accurate, a few details might not be the most up to date. This also means some of the video was actually filmed before the unrated experience policy change that restricts access to a lot of old, unupdated games, meaning there are a handful of games I cover in this video that are now inaccessible. So please keep that in mind in case any of you guys wish to play the games that I discuss. If I'm honest, Roblox's recent ups and downs had honestly put me off finishing this video for a while. It hasn't exactly been the best year for Roblox, as I'm sure we can pretty much all agree. But regardless, hopefully this video will be a fun watch, and maybe even help remind us of Roblox's more happier moments. Anyways, one last thing before we start, my audio was actually acting up during the first 3 segments. That's roughly the first 30 minutes, so the volume might be a little low, meaning you may need to turn it up a bit for those parts. But other than that, let's just get straight into it. So, the last video I did exploring old Roblox games did really well, and I'm glad to see that you all enjoyed watching it as much as I did making it. So I thought to myself, why should I stop there? For some brief context, Roblox is now nearly 20 years old as of 2025. The Imagination platform has seen countless games created by people just like you and me, with some of them being lucky enough to gain popularity within the Roblox community. But as an unfortunate downside to any online platform, nothing stays popular forever. Games on Roblox will always end up losing their appeal one way or another for various reasons, such as neglect from their developers, dwindling player accounts, or simply being overshadowed by newer games. And while some older games are fortunate enough to have brief resurgences in popularity, such as Roblox High School or Roblox's top Runway model, many still remain abandoned for good. These games show no sign of regaining any of the attention or popularity they once had during their prime. Despite this, some of these games are lucky enough to have themselves preserved in a way through the form of both in-game screenshots and video recordings. A lot of this older footage was originally recorded via third-party software such as Hypercam 2 or Fraps, but in February of 2011, Roblox themselves was at a free and easy to use in-game video recorder, making it easy for players, including myself, to document their experiences without the use of any additional software. Because of this, as was my sentimental habit of recording all of my gameplay, I am lucky enough to have a large collection of old Roblox recordings and screenshots, most of which being from around 2012 to 2014. In these recordings, I managed to capture not just popular games from the time, but also some more obscure ones that I'm sure some of you have never heard of. So, just like before in the last video, I'll be rediscovering some of the games that I captured in my footage. We'll talk about a brief history of each game and dive into a little information about the creators as well. If we're lucky enough and the game we're discussing is still accessible, we'll give it a quick playthrough to see if it still holds up today. And just one more thing before we dust off this old virtual photo album. If you ended up enjoying this video and perhaps want to see similar content in the future, feel free to both like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you're a fan of the concept of this video, also feel free to check out the previous episode I did, as all of this will greatly help me produce better content in the future. This video will roughly be over an hour in length, but you don't need to watch it all in one sitting, as I've hopefully added timestamps before each segment. So without any more delay, grab a snack and get comfortable. Let's see what we can find. Starting things off, we'll be covering a game that I'm sure some of you will recognize. This is a video I recorded on July 24th, 2012 of the game Heli-Wars Desert Attack. It was created by a user called DrewsomeB on March 29th, 2008. The game sits at over 16.1 million total visits, with just over 313,000 favorites. For the longest time, Heli-Wars was the most popular game on the entire Roblox platform until it was finally surpassed by Virus Dev's Survive the Disasters in 2011. DrewsomeB is a name some of you may also be familiar with. While now seemingly retired from the platform, during the time he was still active, joining in January 13th, 2008, he founded a very popular Roblox clan called the Elite Wing, which, according to the description, was the second clan to ever be made on the entire platform. It appears that they were a sci-fi military roleplay group of sorts. Heli-Wars, like most early Roblox games, has very simple gameplay. It's essentially a war between two opposing teams, green and, desert? I guess green versus beige just didn't sound cool enough. The players would spawn with both a helicopter and a jeep controller, which, as the name suggested, allowed them to control the helicopters and jeeps seen around their base. These vehicles, while having some keyboard controls, required the use of the player's mouse to move properly. I always remember not knowing how to work these things for the longest time. It was most likely because I was too used to regular Roblox cars only needing the WASD or arrow keys to drive. What didn't help either is that I was using a laptop, forcing me to play using a trackpad. It never occurred to me I need to use my cursor as well to control the vehicles. Instead, I'd either wait for someone else to drive the car for me, or I'd simply take the long walk to the enemy's base myself. You know, it's too bad I didn't think to read the instructions at any point while playing. Anyways, weaponry wise, players would spawn with a very unreliable rocket launcher that would in some cases blow up the user if they weren't careful. There was also an AK-47 and a pistol, as well as a sword for more close quarters combat. Players could also access a VIP room which let them use a fast flying VIP helicopter as well as a multi-rocket, which, as the name suggests, lets you fire multiple rockets at once. And I'm sure that was never abused. In terms of an objective, Heli-Wars is a simple capture the flag game. Players on each team must steal the opposing team's flag, located within each base, and carry it all the way back to their own flag to score. But besides the main objective, Heli-Wars was of course a PvP game at its core, meaning that there'd be a lot of players just joining to rack up KOs on the leaderboard, or to have dogfights in the air with the helicopters. Heli-Wars, like all games, wasn't without its problems. At some point during its life, the game would allow players to use gears from their own personal inventory, meaning that anyone who joined with an overpowered gear could completely turn the server in their favor. Another major problem with Heli-Wars was both the ability to team kill and the easiness to spawn camp. Even with a script that was supposed to prevent team killing, it wouldn't always work as intended, which certain players exploited. Players would become trapped in their own spawns by their own teammates. This issue was mentioned in the Raging Roblox Reviewer series by YeIIIow, where he very openly criticized the team killers and how it affected the game. And while I don't remember the game being as terrible as the video suggests, I am aware it's satirical, I'm sure there's some people who actually did feel that way about the issue. Moving on, there was actually a lesser known version of this game called Heli-Wars Winter Mayhem, also created by DrewsomeB. It's essentially a snow-themed reskin of Desert Attack. It's not much different to the original besides a few exceptions, such as the winter camo and the new Snow Team's vehicles, as well as a SAM tank. Despite this version being vastly overshadowed by the original, Winter Mayhem still has around 1.7 million visits, and just under 64,000 favorites as of 2024. But unfortunately, both Heli-Wars Desert Attack and Winter Mayhem are completely broken as of 2024, and neither have received any forms of updates in a very long time, with Winter Mayhem itself not receiving any attention in over 10 years. None of the core game mechanics like the guns, the vehicles, or even the flags work anymore, leaving only the sword, the jeep, and the parachute functional. Essentially, Heli-Wars has become a glorified sword fighting game in the desert. And while DrewsomeB did attempt to update the original as recently as last year, as mentioned before, he seemingly retired from the platform altogether. Despite its broken state nowadays, Heli-Wars was incredibly popular during its prime, and if the amount of footage online of this game is anything to go off of, it definitely made a huge impact on the community as a whole. As a direct result of that, there has been countless remakes, remasters, and clones, with one of the most popular being a faithful remake by Bean and Soup Guy. This version is pretty much identical to the original, but with a few changes, such as the rounds feature. When a team captures the flag, it adds to a score counter at the top of the screen, and once that counter fills up, the round ends in one of the team's victory, giving the game a way of rewarding players for completing the objective. Bean and Soup Guy's version of Heli-Wars still receives the occasional update, and while it's not as popular as Heli-Wars once was during its prime, it still sees a decent amount of daily players to compete with. Since the servers are capped at 10, you don't really need much players to have fun. And, not even kidding, after visiting it for this video, I've actually started playing Bean and Soup's Heli-Wars more regularly, as it's actually a really fun game. I'll of course leave a link to it in the description alongside the original. Besides Bean and Soup's version, as I've mentioned, there's plenty other remakes, remasters, and clones of Heli-Wars that exist on the Roblox platform, even including one that we'll be discussing later in this video, so I'd definitely recommend checking a few of them out if you have the time. So, back to the original Heli-Wars. Despite being broken and unbeatable as of late, and despite me not really remembering much from when I played it back in 2012, it's hard to deny it really did have a huge impact on Roblox's earlier community. Not only did it hold the title of the most popular game on the entire platform for several years, but it became a key part of Roblox's earlier history. A childhood memory for many, I'm sure, and an inspiration for countless other games, some of which are still active to this very day. Many older players see Heli-Wars as a nostalgic keepsake of sorts, being a true representation of what that platform was like in this era. I always most tend to stop by older games I once played on occasion to see how they're still holding up in current years. And again, if you've got the time, I'd definitely recommend doing the same, as it shows you how far the platform has come in terms of games that you can find. And while Heli-Wars is a shell of its former self, it's definitely not alone in that boat. There are plenty of abandoned, broken, and forgotten games that exist on the platform now. It's games like these, even in their abandoned or broken states, that remind us of how far the platform has come and how much of it has evolved. With all that being said, let's move on from Heli-Wars for now, and check out the next game. This game, while not being as known as the previous entry, was one of the biggest finds for me while researching for this video. I've only got 3 recordings and a single screenshot of this game, all from the 23rd of June 2014. For the longest time before I began making this video in early 2025, I never thought I'd be able to locate it again, as I had little to no information about it. This game was known as Haunted Hospital Adventure, as well as the Horror Hospital, or for a brief time in 2014, the Haunted Hallways of the Heinrich Hospital, created in 2010 by a user called Chthonix. Chthonix, I hope I'm saying that right. Formerly, my username sucks. As of the time of writing, the game sits at just over 540,000 visits with 13,600 favorites alongside it. Haunted, or Horror Hospital, has a very straightforward premise and goal. You wake up in a seemingly abandoned hospital room and you must make your way to the exit and try to escape. It's essentially a very simple horror-themed adventure game with the occasional jump scare, similar to the likes of the Hospital Nightmare games and Bloody Mary Awake and Trapped, to name a few. In this video, I appear to be filming something for YouTube, not a walkthrough or anything. It appears I'm making a sort of movie or short film of this game, you know? This was only 2 months before I created my YouTube channel, so I guess this, and actually a lot more of the other videos that I've rewatched recently where I greet a non-existent audience, was me dipping my toes into the water and trying out content creation for the first time. Also, I'm sure on some occasions I was just trying to convince people I had a YouTube channel or that I was a famous YouTuber of some sorts, despite not actually having the YouTube channel at that point. But anyways, it wouldn't be until December of 2014 why I actually uploaded a YouTube video straight from Roblox. This one here of me going around stabbing NPCs. Of course, if you look now, it's been long since deleted, but this was literally my first ever YouTube video. I just thought I'd mention as it's somewhat related. Speaking of which, this really brings me back to using Windows Movie Maker and watching videos on early YouTube. All the silly titles, transitions, music like Kalimba, Paralyzer or Dreamscape, and what have you. Good times that. Enough sidetracking now. Let's get on to how I actually managed to track down this game after so many years. It of course began with my recordings. Now, obviously I don't remember the name of the game at all. It's been 11 years, so any trace of a name has left my mind completely. Heck, I don't even remember the premise or the setting of the game beforehand. All I knew is that it was a scary adventure game that I once played and recorded over a decade ago. Although I do have some vague memories of my actual experience in game, specifically these 2 players here, who joined in on the recording and we became friends. I also very much remember some of the jump scares in game, such as this clown elevator scare and this ghost thing at the very start. To find the game, my first step was to use the tried and tested method of looking through the badges of the players I met in the video, but even with 5 other players in game, there was not a single badge that led me back to it. I couldn't check my own profile from the recordings either, as that account has long since been deactivated, so that was a dead end. With no badges or name to work with, I watched through the entirety of each video back to back to hopefully find any sign of what the game was. Obviously I knew it was a linear horror game of sorts, and with the whole color scheme and layout of the map, as well as the appearance of a check-in area, I knew this was a hospital of some sorts. With that I could search for specific keywords, such as hospital, horror, scary, etc. You get the picture. My next step was to hopefully find more footage of this game with these search terms in mind, on platforms such as YouTube, as I know searching with Roblox's search engine would just make things difficult. With YouTube I can search for specific time periods, which is not something you can do in the Roblox website for some reason, so I can hopefully get as close to my original recording date as possible, around June of 2014, as I'm sure that's when the game had a player base of sorts. Now it goes without saying that I'd be searching for a while, as my search terms were obviously very vague. During my search, however, I encountered a few other recognizable games, like this one here. This is one of the Hospital Nightmare games I was mentioning earlier, this one specifically being that of the 3rd game, an absolute classic Roblox horror game created by Adrian928 in 2011. I'm sure some of you may be familiar with it. Anyways, after changing my search multiple times, making it more and more specific with every attempt, I eventually stumbled upon a video of that clown jump scare from my original recording as its thumbnail. A video by Roblox Map Play from March 24th, 2014, simply called Roblox Haunted Hospital Part 2, the first part being on his channel. With this I was able to not only find the link to the original game page within the video's description, but I was also able to find more videos of the game by searching for the name mentioned in the date of the upload. But when I opened the link, the game appeared to have been replaced by a now private game called Name That Noise. This is possibly due to Roblox's previous game restrictions for non-Builders Club members. Builders Club, for those unaware, was what Roblox Premium used to be called before September of 2019. The restriction prevented Roblox developers from having more than one public game open at once, meaning that a lot of developers would end up replacing a popular game if they wanted to create something new with an existing audience on that account. That restriction was lifted in 2015, of course. So, to confirm my findings, first I ran Name That Noise through the Wayback Machine, and results showed that this was in fact Haunted Hospital Adventure. I then discovered that the game had gone under a handful of names throughout its life by running Chthonix's profile through the Wayback Machine as well. To do this, I simply reformatted the link to his profile to resemble one from before 2015, as after 2015 Roblox changed the way most of the website's links were formatted, including user profiles. Using this method, the earliest appearance of the game that I could find was from 2011, where it was simply titled ... Then throughout the years it was changed to variations of Horror Hospital, and it even became another game entirely at one point called Horror Mansion. Then of course it was named to Haunted Hospital Adventure sometime in early 2014, then to the Heinrich Hospital, and then finally in mid to late 2015 where it was replaced completely with Name That Noise. Looking at Chthonix's profile nowadays reveals that he'd actually re-uploaded a copy of the Haunted Hospital in 2015, which surprisingly enough has only just gotten over 100 visits a decade later. In fact, even the original place didn't have as much visits as I had thought. I was expecting this game to have at least 1 million, as I usually only played games that appeared on the homepage at that time. But the more I think about it, the more it makes sense really. As I mentioned earlier, there's only 5 other players that joined throughout the entirety of my 3 recordings from 2014. Now that I've seen this visit count, I'm surprised I was able to find one video of this game on YouTube, let alone multiple. So despite the original game page being replaced and set to private, you can still visit a version of Haunted Hospital Adventure to this very day, and I did just that, as I don't even remember completing it all those years prior, so now seemed like a perfect time. Jumping into the game after 11 years, it was obvious nothing's changed much from what I remember, although I did encounter a lot more ghosts seemingly in this playthrough, including one that actually did give me quite the small scare at the start. And also, you know I had to get an exact replica of the outfit I wore in the original recordings, down to the enormous cookie strapped to my chest that I considered a t-shirt, although it was a re-upload, but that's not important. The game works incredibly well even after being untouched for 9 years. It's of course a little rough around the edges, literally there are lots of gaps in the walls specifically around the edges of them, but if I'm honest, there was plenty of other games that had the exact same flaw, so it's completely fine. Other than that, I didn't actually encounter a single bug or error at all during my entire playthrough, and that just shows you how well the game's held up after all these years. Because it's very common for abandoned older Roblox games to start to break down over the years. We've of course seen this in the last game we covered, Heli-Wars, which is completely unplayable as of late. Against countless Roblox engine updates and lack of work being done on it, the Haunted Hospital stood the test of time and is still playable from start to finish, unlike most older games. Something that surprised me was that there was no way of losing the game, and there was nothing that could actually damage you. Most linear Roblox horror games of the time would have some sort of threat that you would need to avoid, but not this one. I'm unsure if this is intentional or not, but this really makes the game more of an atmospheric horror game more than anything else. Well, you know, as atmospheric as an early 2010s Roblox game can get, of course. Now this does mean there was a lot of walking involved, but at no point was I bored of the game, as I was actually genuinely curious at some points. Not sure if that's because of a nostalgic bias, or I'm just excited to finally experiencing what I missed after 11 years. In terms of a story, there isn't really much given, as again I believe the game is trying to scare you and be more atmospheric than anything else. It actually reminds me of those haunted house attractions, you know the ones where they have actors or puppets scream at you as you walk through them, the ones you see at carnivals. Anyways, Haunted Hospital, while being simple, did have its fair share of memorable moments. As I've said before, you start in this hospital room with a row of beds, which oddly enough has always stuck with me and is the one room that I remember the most. It's definitely due to the fact that I met some new friends here, so, you know, obviously I have a more personal connection. Another standout moment to me, of course, is the clown elevator jump scare, the very part of the game that helped me rediscover it years later. I always remember this part specifically because of how my pal here gets hilariously flung in the original recording. It's like he was scared by the clown almost. Speaking of which, and epilepsy warning, I cannot forget about the flashing room filled with a bunch of clown photos as well as a little short ride at the end. Looking back nowadays, it's of course incredibly cheesy, but I'm sure this scared at least some players back then. Another thing I noticed is how much clowns are actually in this game. If I'm not mistaken, around this time the idea of scary clowns really began to take off on Roblox, with lots of games including them in some form. I might be wrong though. I don't know why a bunch of scary clowns would be in a hospital. Maybe they were friendly clowns at one point, visiting the sick patients, but they turned evil for some reason. Who knows? The more I think about the lore implications for some of the sillier aspects of the game, the more I realize it really doesn't matter. Again, I'm pretty sure the game's just trying to be scary. Well, you know, as scary as it can be at least. Nothing against Chthonix and his work here. I really do like this game, but other than that tiny scare I got at the start, the game isn't too scary compared to what we have on the platform nowadays. Moving on. Some other memorable moments included created the maze that led to a garden-like area, which I always thought was such a huge contrast from the rest of the game. Going from the same white corridors to suddenly being in this almost peaceful garden really gives you a false sense of freedom and security. This area is originally why I stopped playing during my older recordings, meaning that everything ahead of this point was completely new to me. Now going completely blind to what was ahead of me, I encountered a study room of sorts with a secret bookshelf. Again, a huge contrast to the rest of the game. Feels almost calming in a sense. Alongside that, there was of course plenty of ghosts, creatures, and jump scares throughout. The game finally came to a sudden halt after I found myself in a big grass field with a fence off in the distance blocking any further progress. This appeared to be the end of the game. Well, not really, this is as far as I can get, as the game is actually unfinished. This fence was as far as the game officially went, with a big coming soon sign blocking the entrance. And with the game going untouched for 9 years, I doubt it'll be finished anytime soon. Hopping the fence revealed a row of graves, all with names of different types of fears engraved onto them. 2 of these graves had an entrance, although both had nothing but a floor at the bottom. What I think this would have been was a sort of pick your poison route, where the player needs to face a fear of sorts to continue further. But unfortunately, we'll probably never know for sure. It is a shame that after all this time the game hasn't been completed, and to think that I didn't really miss much as well is a bummer. But I am grateful to have actually been able to find it again and play it for the first time in over a decade. Playing this definitely brings me back to how old Roblox horror games were like at the time. Oftentimes being very cheesy but fun to explore, and clearly built by a passionate developer, as you can see in this one. You can really tell that Chthonix put a lot of effort into this game, even if it doesn't hold up nowadays in terms of quality. So if you're in the mood to play an older Roblox horror adventure game, definitely check out the re-upload of Haunted Hospital, and feel free to share it around as well. I'm sure someone might recognize it. Just like before, it will be linked down below in this video's description. I hope to get this game's visit count up even just by a little. While it is unfinished and abandoned, I'm sure many people other than myself made friends on it, had fun exploring, and of course made good memories. And it would be great to let these people experience that game again just like me. So, that's it for Haunted Hospital Adventure, Horror Hospital, or the Haunted Halls of the Heinrich Hospital. Let's move on to the next game. The next game seen in these 3 recordings from mid to late 2014 was at one point one of my favourite games on Roblox, alongside the likes of Vampire Hunters and Roblox High School. It is of course Twisted Murderer, created by a very familiar name to some, Taymaster, who some of you may know also created or helped create other popular Roblox games such as Mad City, Eat or Die, and Fashion Famous, just to name a few. Twisted Murderer was released on September 9th, 2014, and currently sits at over 93 million total visits, with 412,000 favourites alongside it. Twisted Murderer is of course a murder mystery game, a genre of Roblox games that got incredibly popular in 2014. For those unaware, in murder mystery games, players are divided into 3 separate roles: innocents who must survive, the lone sheriff who must identify and stop the murderer, and of course, the murderer himself, who must eliminate all the other teams. Some recognizable games that follow this formula include Murder Mystery and its very much still popular sequel Murder Mystery 2, created by Nicholas, which I'm sure a lot of you are very aware of. Mad Murderer by Lolorus, which I do plan on covering one of these videos sometime in the near future, and to an extent, the Vampire Hunter series by Zack Attack, which I actually covered in the last video, so go check that out afterwards. Fun fact actually, most of the games like these are inspired by the 2013 Garry's Mod murder game mode created by Mechanical Mind. If you're an avid fan of the Roblox Murderer games, you may notice some very familiar gameplay mechanics with the Gmod game mode. I just thought I'd mention that quickly, as a lot of people, even mega fans of games like Murder Mystery 2, don't know this fact, and I definitely don't blame them. As much as I don't want to say the Roblox versions have overshadowed the original, it's definitely apparent. Murder Mystery 2, and Twisted Murder itself for that matter, absolutely dwarf Gmod Murder in terms of visits. That even exceeds the public subscriber count on the original Steam Workshop page. Of course, this may be due to how old it is nowadays, and unfortunately, the last time I looked, the original game mode only had a handful of players online, with most of them being on a singular server. It's quite sad to see. Anyways, unlike most Roblox murder games that follow the same gameplay loop of round-based murdering, Twisted Murderer has a more unique and, in my opinion, more fun spin on the formula. While it still follows the same round-based murder mystery format, similar to the likes of Vampire Hunters, every few rounds there's a special game mode taking the place of the default one. There were multiple of these game modes, including, just to name a few, both a murderer and sheriff free-for-all game mode which turned every player into either roles, resulting in a fight to the death with the last man standing won. There was the Juggernaut game mode, which saw an incredibly bullet-resistant murderer facing an entire army of sheriffs, a freeze tag-like game mode where the murderer needs to freeze the innocents in order to win, and many, many more. It was these special game modes as well as the high quality map design, specifically that of the lobby, which became memorable to many I'm sure including myself, that allowed Twisted Murderer to achieve its popularity. That as well on top of the multiple knife and gun skins, abilities, effects and even pets that all helped Twisted Murderer stand out among the crowd. Of course the game was heavily praised for loads of other features and quality of life changes that weren't in previous games in the genre. This included the earbuds, a way of listening to music in-game for free with the only downside being that you were the only one who could hear it. Of course this could be changed with the purchase of the Twisted Radio Game Pass for 500 Robux. Another handy feature was the ability to see where the final players were once there was only 2 survivors left, greatly helping to avoid the murderer from running around in circles trying to find the final player who may as well just be on the other side of the map. And in the shop, instead of simply showing a still photo of an item, Twisted Murderer would instead show you a 3D preview of it, letting you view the entire thing before purchasing. Think of it like Roblox's viewport frame feature, but just 4 years before it was actually added. May seem commonplace nowadays, but this was rare for older Roblox games. And on a similar note, I always remember how cool I thought some of the weapons and maps were, a handful of them having a lot of influence from internet culture at the time, specifically that of MLG montage parodies, which, if you don't know, were over-the-top skit videos created to parody gaming montages. There isn't really a way to describe them other than them being pure and utter chaos, but they were something that I absolutely adored back then. There's a whole handful of features in this game, like weapon skins, abilities, pets, music, and even a whole map based around MLG. You can really tell this is when the idea of those montage parody videos really started popping off on websites like YouTube, Vimeo, and in this case, Roblox. In fact, the whole feel of this game, not just the MLG parts, really take me back to those carefree summer days of 2014. It's a perfect example of what Roblox games from that era were like, since this was around the time where Roblox started to take themselves more seriously as a company, and the platform began to become more popular at an ever-growing rate thanks to its sudden popularity on websites like YouTube. This was a sort of middle ground between what I'd consider classic Roblox and what we have on the platform nowadays. Roblox games began to look, sound, and play a lot better than they did in the previous years, and Twisted Murderer definitely excels in that regard. Now, onto controversies. I can't really find much. The only complaints I could find were from some old fan blogs. God, I miss when things like that were more common. For example, this one here complains that they didn't like how the players spawn as their characters instead of a pre-made one, similar to Mad Murderer, as they believe it encouraged teaming. They also state how they dislike that the map doesn't change every round and instead after every 5. But then they praise the game in the same post for its better qualities that we discussed, notably the shop, game passes, game modes, and detailed level design. So overall, they mostly tolerated the game's shortcomings, as they put it. The only other problems were more personal. I remember there were a handful, not a lot, but a small subsection of the players who had toxic tendencies. Unsure if this was because the game's appeal to more of a try-hardy player base, or I was just unlucky in encountering them. But to be honest, most games always have people like that. Another issue I didn't capture on camera as much, but was definitely something I saw, was the amount of people abusing glitches to escape the map and essentially soft-lock the murderer from winning. Unless they, did the same. But that's more of a problem with Roblox rather than Twisted Murderer itself. One notable thing about controversies that I do want to mention, however, was that Twisted Murderer had a rivalry with, and was often compared to Lawless's Mad Murderer. There was word that Twisted Murderer was a clone or a shameless ripoff of Mad Murderer. And yes, the games definitely had their similarities, but at the time I believe that was due to how the two games both came from the exact same source, the Gmod Game Mode Murder that I mentioned earlier. But that wasn't until I stumbled upon an old Roblox dev forum post from April of 2016, discussing the development of Mad Paintball 2, where the developers of each game, Lawless and Taymaster, got into an exchange which led Taymaster to admitting that Twisted Murderer, as well as another game of his called Murder Simulator, both started as satirical responses to Mad Murderer that unexpectedly gained massive popularity. But in the same post, Taymaster wished to put the rivalry to rest, although I'm unsure if it did or not. Another thing I want to mention was the character in Mad Murderer named David, who had a striking resemblance to Taymaster's Roblox avatar. This character was eventually removed, which some speculate was due to the rising tension between the two developers. Whether this Easter egg was meant as a light-hearted jab or something more pointed is unclear. This whole discovery sort of changed my entire perspective of the two games, especially Twisted Murderer, but at the end of the day, both games had better legacies that outweighed the rivalry. And even if Twisted Murderer was originally made as a joke, I'm still glad it turned out to be more than that and became its own unique and fleshed out game, which luckily became popular. And by the way, I don't wish to point fingers or anything. I enjoyed both games when they were popular. This is just something I unearthed, and I mean no disrespect to either developer. Anyways, the only real complaint I see from Twisted Murderer nowadays is the lack of attention it's gotten recently. The game is in fact still up to this very day, but it's not been updated in over 6 years, leading to a handful of broken features which thankfully are nothing major. For one, the MVP area is completely broken. Even if you own the Game Pass, you won't be able to access it. There are a few textures and sounds that are missing, but that's understandable considering Roblox's recent changes regarding copyright, moderation, etc. And, worst of all, the dancing NPC in the lobby has been turned into a noob, making the game completely unplayable. My immersion is ruined. I'm kidding, of course. The actual main thing keeping you from playing the game at the moment is the lack of players, but I'm sure with a couple of friends you'll be able to play this just fine. In fact, during the making of this video, I was lucky enough to find myself in a decently sized server with around 10 or more players. The server even managed to stay full even after multiple map changes and didn't immediately empty out as I assumed it would. Many older games, especially ones that go untouched for multiple years, usually aren't as popular enough for a full server to stay up for longer than a few minutes at a time. Players just come and go. Most people usually just stop by to reminisce of an old game they once played. It's just lucky that we all decided to stop by for a bit and play a few rounds. We even discussed some happy nostalgic memories of the game, which really made my whole night. Now, not trying to bring down the mood, but during this playthrough I did encounter a few more bugs. For one, most of, if not all of the maps have lighting problems, meaning that sometimes you'd just be trapped in the dark, and while it definitely did add some fear and tension into the game, it soon quickly got on our nerves. Some of the maps seem to have clipping problems as well. On rare occasions we just fell out of the map entirely. Specifically, this happened the most on the spooky school map in particular. There were also problems with the ragdolls, meaning we just become stiff corpses when we died, making me do double takes whenever I saw a person I just stabbed standing upright, like I was seeing a ghost or something. All of the game passes, not just the MVP pass, are completely broken, so if you're looking to revisit the game like me, do not buy the game passes. They will not work. And finally, the knife itself, which in some cases would not even work for me, meaning I had to solely rely on throwing my knives just to get a kill. Although it seems that I was the only one having this problem, since I saw the other players in the server stabbing just fine, and I saw no other complaints. You know, maybe, just maybe, this was a skill issue. But that's impossible. I'm cracked at this game. I've got all these years of experience. You've got to believe me. Anyways, despite these problems, again, I'm still really happy that I found this lobby. Beforehand, I was only joining the game to get some footage for this video, but I decided, you know what, I'm going to stick around, as additional players kept joining. More and more until eventually there was a full lobby, which again stuck around for almost an hour. So overall, I'm just really happy to have been able to experience this game again. Moving on, I also wanted to mention just quickly a more active as well as an accurate remake of Twisted Murderer, created by Jacob the Gummy Bear on the old Roblox emulator Retro Studio. Just get everything the original had, all its shop items, maps, game modes, and even the original's promo codes as well, which is just so awesome to see. And yes, this remake is being regularly updated and maintained for now. Just like the Heli-Wars remake I mentioned before, I've actually started playing Jacob the Gummy Bear's Twisted Murderer remake on a more regular basis, whenever the original is quiet of course. It feels great to have this game back in my life to an extent, because as I said at the start of the segment, Twisted Murderer was one of my absolute favourites, and I was very happy to play it again. In fact, through this remake I was finally able to visit the upstairs MVP only area, something I just didn't do when I played back in 2014, and something you can't do anymore in the original, as of course it's broken like I mentioned earlier. When the remake is up, there's usually around 2 full servers, plenty enough people to get a few rounds in. I definitely recommend doing so if you want to experience a largely bug-free rendition of what Twisted Murderer was like. Now, there isn't much else to say on Twisted Murderer as a whole without making this a 30-minute long segment. Again, it is one of my most favourite Roblox games of all time, but I feel like I can't do enough justice in this video alone, especially with what I got planned later on in this episode. So, if you're all interested, I can make a separate and more in-detailed video of this game sometime in the future. Just let me know. Anyways, before we move on to the next game, check out this sick MLG montage video I made of Twisted Murderer. I'll see you in the next game.
I used to be so cracked at this game mode.
You what, mate?
That's the wrong number! Oh, baby, a triple! Oh, yeah!
Wow.
Quick update before we move on to the next entry. Literally moments before I finished making this video, I noticed Twisted Murderer actually had an update for Christmas. Most if not all the issues I've mentioned have been fixed, and there seems to be more things in the works. Because of this, the game is actually semi-popular right now. So if I were you, I'd go play a few rounds in before the hype dies down. Definitely excited to see what comes for this game next. Anyhow. Before the segment starts, I want to personally thank Green Lego Cats 123 for providing me with additional videos, screenshots, information, and general support regarding this game and its creator. Please, if you haven't done so already, go subscribe to his YouTube channel and show him some love and support. So, the next game seen in these 4 recordings from late 2014 might not be as well remembered today, but at one point in time it was once very popular. This game is Boys and Girls Hangout, a role-playing game created by Dark1020 on August 29th, 2014. As of the recording date, this version of the game currently sits at 28.8 million visits, with just over 111,000 favorites on top of that. If the name Dark1020 rings a bell to you, you may be familiar with his other games, like City Life, a city role-playing game made in 2017 with just under 28 million visits, as well as Guess That Song from 2016, which, as the title suggests, is a song guessing game and is in fact still open to this very day, although it's pretty much abandoned at this point. Despite this, it sits at 11.8 million total visits itself. But Boys and Girls Hangout was by far one of Dark1020's most well-known games. It is obviously one of those boys and girls or party hangout games, a very common genre of games in Roblox during the early to mid 2010s that were primarily based around socializing and role-playing with other players. These games almost always include some form of gender-specific places or teams, such as separate spawn areas, or even entire parts of the map just for either boys or girls. There would usually be either some form of dance area, like this stage here in the video, places that the player could live in, like this house, and various other places for users to explore, relax, roleplay, or customize their avatars in. I can't underestimate how many of these boys and girls role-playing games there were. They were truly everywhere. Most of the time they were just clones of one another or simple cash grabs, the same 3 models with little variation. And while there were some that were made with a little more care and were a little bit more polished, some, if not most of them, were made with money in mind, especially near the end of the trend. That rhymed. Of course, we can't talk about this genre without addressing the elephant in the room, the overwhelming presence of online daters, or just oders for short. They would come to these games with the express purpose of either having romantic roleplays with one another, or, even in worst case scenarios, would attempt to do more inappropriate roleplays. Trust me, not all of these boys and girls hangout games are like this. I saw this one game by a user called Nicrella, who was begging its player base to not online date as he feared the game would be taken down if they did. But the amount of games that would cater to oders outweighed these smaller, more family-friendly games and gave the whole genre an incredibly bad reputation. And rightly so. With Roblox being a children's platform, you can tell this was and still is a massive problem even to this day. Players believe that Roblox themselves aren't doing anything, or at least haven't done enough about these odors, and it definitely appears to be that way, seeing how many of these games were criticized for facilitating them. It was said that this game in particular was the most odor-infested game on the entire platform at the time, and while Dark1020 didn't directly encourage it in his game, he was still very much aware of the problem and was either unwilling to, or at least unaware of how to implement some sort of safeguard. There were rumors that he himself was also an odor as well. I stumbled upon a Twitter/X account that supposedly belonged to Dark1020, where he considered himself to be the king of online dating, although it is marked as a parody account, and is not posted since March of 2015. Only leads to this could be him would be a post where he requests someone to get a screenshot of a character from The Mad Murderer to put them in a thumbnail for Boys and Girls Hangout. It would be a bit odd for a parody account to request that on behalf of the guy they're impersonating, so this is most likely him. The controversy surrounding Dark1020 led some users to believe that he wasn't just passively allowing oding in his game, but was actively catering to it, such as in this forum post here from late 2016, where some users outright asked for his account to be banned, and I definitely don't blame them for saying this. All of this would definitely not be a good example for his player base, which was mostly comprised of young kids who couldn't even spell things most of the time, let alone understand the risks of online dating. Many simply would copy what they saw other players doing, not realizing how dangerous that activity could actually be. This not only put them at the risk of having their account suspended, if the moderation actually did their job, but this could lead to them encountering actual bad actors, predators, who probably see games like these as easy hunting grounds. If Dark1020 really is allowing this kind of behavior to begin with, it's incredibly irresponsible on his part, and he's got every right to be criticized for it. Of course, odoring isn't limited to just this game. Many Roblox games even to this day suffer from this issue. Think of Meep City for one. It's when developers themselves don't deal with the odoring problem in some form, instead choose to ignore it, or unfortunately in this case with Boys and Girls Hangout, seemingly encourage it. Anyways, with that now partially out of the way, and before I make the segment too negative, I want to go into how I was able to actually track down this game, as similar to before with the Haunted Hospital game we covered earlier, I had no recollection of what this game was other than a few obvious clues. It just appeared to be too generic for me to remember. So, for one, I obviously knew it was one of those boys and girls or party hangout games from the footage alone. Note the color coordinated changing rooms, of course, as well as the various areas in the map like the music stage, the house, swimming pool, etc. I knew it had to be one of those games. It does appear to be somewhat popular too, with the server's player count alone being filled to the brim. But of course, if I was searching solely based on these factors alone for such a generic looking game, I'll probably be here all day, almost like finding a needle in a haystack. In order to actually find this game, I would need to look for something more specific. My first plan was to again check the profiles of the players in the game to look for badges, but this was just a waste of time more than anything, as I couldn't even find much leads this way. Even with the amount of players who were in the server at the time, I didn't know what badge I was searching for since there was no appearance of a badge giver in game, and at that point I didn't exactly know what the game's name or the developer's name was, so it was pointless to try this. My best bet was to look around for clues in the video. For one, the areas I just mentioned, the swimming pool stage, all led me to believe this was specifically a pool party hangout game. Trying my luck once again with the search function on the Roblox website, I tried variations of both pool party, boys and girls, hangout, etc. But again, with such a generic name, this would show me nothing but copy and pasted games. There was no way I was finding it here, that if it was even still public to begin with. So I checked outside of Roblox, on YouTube once again, using the same search terms and restricting it to only show results from around the time of the original recordings, which was late 2014. At first, I couldn't find anything surprisingly, considering how popular the game was. Its genericness made it either blend in with every other game, or I was digging too deep in the wrong direction. There was a point in my search where I stumbled upon a very similar looking game with the same premise, although I quickly knew this wasn't what I was looking for. The map just appeared to be another free model mess, and I'm pretty sure it was just another game catered to odors. But I did try to find this game, which the video is dubbed Midnight Pool Party as well, just in the chance it was connected to what I was searching for. Thankfully, it had gone completely unchanged since this video was made, so I was easily able to find it by searching for the name. Can't lie though, despite the map being a free model mess and what it was made for, I actually really miss when Roblox games used to look like this. A certain low qualityness that just brings me back to how those old browser-based games similar to Roblox used to feel. It was almost, dare I say, liminal in a sense, but I can't explain why. It's just an abandoned, empty world that's probably not been played since this YouTube video was filmed. A place that I'm sure at one point was really active, but now it's just nothing but a desolate and empty corner of Roblox that lets us take a look at what the platform was like during the earlier years. I mean, just look at this music player for one. This gave me a lot of those nostalgic shivers, and I'm pretty sure this is something that I saw a lot in earlier Roblox games. You might see it in some of my footage. Anyways, this game was Midnight Pool Party, created by Fat as a Block, who themselves have been terminated. No surprise there. But enough sidetracking, let's move on. This was just another dead end and has zero connection to what we were looking for. I just thought I'd mention it. I had to change my search terms multiple times until I got this term here. This seemed to have some level of success, as after scrolling for a bit I managed to stumble upon a physical recording of someone playing the actual game. But unfortunately, this video alone didn't have any links to the game itself, but what it did have was a more specific name to look for. It was Boys and Girls Hangout. Do you have the slightest idea how little that narrows it down? At least I now know it doesn't have any type of unique name, so that narrows the search down slightly. You may be asking to yourself, why didn't I just search Boys and Girls Hangout from the start? It was so obvious and would have made things so much more easier for me. The name was just so generic, I just didn't think it would actually be called that. It had to be called something more specific. It just had to be. I assumed I'd just be flooded with tons of videos of games all with that name, but as we'll soon find out, this wasn't the case at all. Anyway, so, with the date of both this upload and my original recording date alongside the name in mind, hopefully I can find more footage of this game. And thankfully I did. Not only was I able to find another video of this game, but instead I found multiple of them. And lucky enough for me, a handful of these videos had a link to the game itself, meaning I had finally found it. I had definitely underestimated how popular this game actually was. It's the fact that I don't even remember the game much. And because I mentioned, it was just so generic looking, and I didn't think the game would actually be called that. In some cases after the search was over, this game was literally the first result I got when I searched for the name. I could have saved so much more time. I was just digging way too deep in the wrong direction. Unfortunately, for the sake of this video, the game, as well as a remade version of it from 2016, have both become privated. The one I'm familiar with, the 2014 version, was taken down by Roblox themselves in fact. In this video by GreenLegoCats123, he states how it was set under review by Roblox and has not been opened since. I did stumble upon an even older version of this game released in 2013. Looking back on YouTube for footage of this version revealed that it was literally just the same game, so it's most likely this version was set under review as well. Now then, with the game found, and before we wrap this segment up, let's discuss the map of Boys and Girls Hangout. It really isn't anything remarkable. It's simply built with a handful of free models, but there were quite a handful of places to visit in game that keeps it somewhat interesting that I mentioned earlier. For one, the stage again, which is a free model from the toolbox, where me and my brother, Micah from Miami, would listen to a handful of popular songs at the time that Dark added to his game's music player, which itself is also a free model. Songs like Happy by Pharrell Williams, Fancy by Charlie XCX, Turn Down for What by DJ Snake and Lil Jon, just to name a few. The latter two of which being our favourites apparently, as we would play these two songs on repeat on many occasions within the recordings. This was before Roblox put heavy restriction on copyrighted audio by the way, which is something I definitely miss most about older Roblox, but I understand why they had to add these restrictions. Anyways, there was also these hot air balloons too that we appeared to be a fan of. Again, it's probably just another free model, but it seems like we had fun. Yep, here we are, here it is on Roblox Studio. There was also a skate park near the end of the map that we didn't really visit, and again I found this on Studio. I'm really starting to wonder how much of this game was actually original content and how much of it was just stolen from the toolbox. Don't get me wrong, you're allowed to use free models, they're there for a reason, but when your whole game is made up of them, that's when it gets a little out of hand. Now, I know I've been really critical of this game and its creator, but as I said earlier, I do actually really miss when Roblox games used to look like this, to an extent. I can't explain it. It's like a virtual paradise or holiday destination, like live in a 5-star resort, if you're familiar. If you ignore the flaws like we did at the time and picture yourself as a kid playing this after a long day of school or something, you get it. It's the low qualityness of it all. Simple, unpolished, but almost comforting. At least, that's how I tried to remember it. There isn't else much to say in Boys and Girls Hangout. It's one of the more forgettable games in this video because, as I've said plenty of times already, it's way too generic. There isn't anything much that stands out, at least to me. I largely associate it with negativity due to its overabundance of odors. I don't really have much personal stories or much positive things to tell of it other than what I said a few moments ago. I want to add as well that I mean no disrespect towards Dark 1020 despite how critical I've been. Some things just need to be said. Anyways, before we move on, I again want to personally thank Green Lego Cats 123 for helping me out with this segment. I 100% recommend checking out his channel if you've got the time. In the past he actually had made a handful of videos of this game, all from around 2015 to 16. Mostly where he trolls online daters. They are quite funny, so definitely go check him out if I were you. Anyways, let's move on to the next game. This will be another more obscure older Roblox game. Seen in this singular recording from the 22nd of September 2012 is a game simply called Midnight Traincrash, created by Simoon68 on the 20th of March 2010. Currently, as of the recording date, this game sits at 487.1 thousand visits, with just under 10,000 favorites as well, making this the most obscure game up to this point in the entire video. I guarantee some of you will know who Simon68 is, as alongside another user called Oplo, he's one of the founders of the Abracadabra studio, who are behind the incredibly iconic Shark Bite made in 2017. Which itself has an insane 1.5 billion visits. Yes, billion with a B, which is such a huge contrast to Midnight Traincrash that hasn't even reached 500,000. Shark Bite, as well as the sequel Shark Bite 2, are both round-based shark survival games where you have to face and defeat a boat-eating shark. I've not played either game in a good while, but I still definitely recommend playing it as they're both incredibly fun with friends. I mean, for crying out loud, Shark Bite even has its own section on the list of Roblox games Wikipedia page, alongside many other popular games like Adopt Me, Brookhaven, and Dress to Impress. If that doesn't tell you how popular Shark Bite is, I don't know what will. They also made another familiar game called Backpacking, which itself sits at a still impressive 219 million total visits. It's a light-hearted open world camping simulator, and while I don't recall playing it myself, the game does look quite fun as well. Unfortunately, unlike Simoon's other games, Midnight Traincrash has been completely forgotten about in Roblox's history books, not even being mentioned in any of the Roblox wiki pages about Simon68. It's absolutely insane how this niche game from the 2010s that hasn't even scratched 500,000 visits was made by the same person who's behind one of the most popular and well-known games on the entire platform. So with these more popular games out of the way, this takes us back to Midnight Traincrash itself, which is of course a train crashing game. There were tons of these games on older Roblox, even including one that we covered in the previous video. As a physics-based game engine, of course these types of games would be very common, especially in its earlier years. Since it doesn't appear to be that popular compared to the other games in this video, it's most likely we didn't find it on the front page, which is how we usually found games, but rather searched for it instead. At the time we were huge fans of both Lego trains and watching them crash. We probably spent hours watching Lego train crashes on YouTube. It was something we did religiously, even before we knew what Roblox was. So we were probably trying to find games that catered to this fascination. That might explain how we ended up discovering such a niche and obscure game. To be honest, I don't remember whether we enjoyed it or not, or if it filled our fix of Lego destruction. And in fact, now that I think about it, this is probably how we also found and played the Drive a Car into a Train game by Michael1888, the game from the previous video I just mentioned a few moments ago. The recordings are only a month apart after all. Speaking of dates, in fact, I learned that this game was actually named Survive a Train Crash or Be Rescued the day we had played it, as conveniently enough, someone had archived it on the exact same day, September 22nd, 2012. It was ultimately changed back a few days later, however, but anyways. On another very quick side note, you may have noticed that in this recording, as well as in the Heli-Wars footage from the start of the video, that we're playing as a guest, something I just haven't mentioned up until now. If you're unaware, guests were introduced in 2008 as a way to play Roblox without an account, though with heavy restrictions. They had a somewhat mixed reception, despite the nostalgia they seemingly hold today. Some saw guests as an easy way to bypass being banned in order to exploit, while others others felt like they took up too much space in servers without contributing much, as their data wouldn't save and they weren't able to chat through normal means, which actually annoyed a decent amount of players if I remember correctly. That said, for many older players, guests were their first experience with Roblox. This was recorded just 2 months before I actually made my account in November, and if it weren't for guests, who knows, maybe I wouldn't have stuck around at all. It's just fun to look back at them despite their flaws. Anyway, that's just something I thought I'd mention. Back to the game. The way I found this game again was actually quite simple and it was a lot more easier compared to the other games that we've covered. I simply checked the badges of the players I met in game and it actually worked this time. This player here to be more specific, as I've not been active since 2012. That mixed with the fact that the badge itself is literally just a screenshot of the game made it super easy to find. The game has a very simple premise and goal. You wait at the train station for a train that spawns in every 5 minutes to arrive. Then you must board said train and survive the head-on collision with a collapsed bridge. Then, after the train falls off a cliff, walk over to this flaming gas station, and then finally walk onto this conveyor to earn points. These said points can be used to unlock gears from this shop UI, get some skateboards, board games, etc. Surprisingly enough, Midnight Traincrash is still up to this very day, and in fact its core features, the train itself, the crash, and the point system still function really well. I believe the only issues with the game were some of the gears, like the skateboards, seeing that they're broken in most Roblox games nowadays, as well as the game passes. The game passes are fairly cheap, with the cheapest being only 12 Robux, so if you have bought them already, you thankfully haven't lost too much. With Roblox's physics system being updated over the years, the train doesn't usually get past a cliff area without shattering into a gazillion pieces, meaning that most of the time you now need to walk the rest of the journey. It roughly takes about 2 to 3 minutes to get to the bottom and past the gas station, which eventually gets very repetitive if you're doing it multiple times. I'm not sure whether this is actually a problem with modern Roblox's physics or not, as believe it or not in the original recording, we never actually caught the aftermath of the crash and instead we were just flung from the wreckage. But looking for footage of this game on YouTube reveals that the train originally went so much further down the cliff before breaking up. But anyways, Midnight Traincrash apparently had its own story, told through various set pieces, of how the train crash actually occurred. The crash is caused by a handful of accidents, starting with this weather warning of supposed high winds and fog in the area. Also at the train station, these two cops discover a missing train attachment that of course has come loose from the unaware and now doomed train, which will be heading right towards a collapsed bridge caused by a car wreck. And because of the high winds in the area, the train is pushed off the cliff it crashed by, which sends it tumbling down the mountain. Absolute cinema. Moving on, I just gotta say how much I love the way the map looks. Again, it's that almost low qualityness of older and more simpler Roblox games that I love reminiscing about. I'm a huge fan of those stretched, blurry textures of what appears to be leaves strewn across the map. It really brings me back to a much more simpler time, and it's a perfect example of how Roblox games were once built. Anyways, just before we finish off this segment, there's one more thing I want to mention about this game. It had a sequel, that's right, and some of you may have played it at some point. It's called Monorail Crash, which currently sits at 1.2 million visits, and is still visible on Simon's profile. It's twice as popular and completely overshadows the original. And yes, this game is mentioned on Simoon68's wiki page on the Roblox fandom wiki. Monorail Crash is a heavily expanded on version of Midnight Traincrash, being clearly built off of it. It too is still up to this very day and still works from start to finish, with its most recent update being roughly 3 years ago with supposed bug fixes, although it has the same gear and game pass problems as before. What sets it apart from the original is mostly to do with the map itself. It now takes place in a jungle, with the monorail being made to tour people around said jungle. But of course it ends up coming loose from its rail and falling down a massive waterfall, as it wouldn't really be much of a train crash game if it didn't. Once at the bottom, the player must traverse the jungle and escape. That's if they survive the fall in the first place. Once escaped, the player can collect points from this point pool, which again sends them back to the lobby with a heap of points. But again, with the gears being broken, these points are pretty useless, which in turn unfortunately removes any replayability from the game. But if you are a fan of older Roblox games, it's still worth playing through at least once. Anyways, Midnight Traincrash, as seemingly obscure as it is nowadays, is a charming example of earlier Roblox games, and I'm glad to have been able to experience it during its short-lived popularity. And I was happy to be able to find it again as well. I'd definitely check it and its sequel out with a friend or two if you've got the time. Now then, this video is getting fairly long. If you stuck around this far already, don't forget to like this video, if you've enjoyed it of course. Be sure to subscribe as well to get more content like this in the future, and thank you for the continued support. We've got a handful of games left to cover, including a few more iconic ones to look forward to. So, without wasting any more time, let's move on. Now back to a more popular game for this segment. The game seen in these 4 recordings from the 10th of July 2014 is of course DizzyPurple's Beach House Roleplay, a role-playing / hangout game set in, you guessed it, a beach house. With this game page originally being created on the 21st of July 2010, it currently sits on an impressive 45 million visits, with just over 316,000 favourites to top it all off. If you're familiar with the name DizzyPurple, you may know their other popular game, the absolute iconic Roblox's top Runway model, a round-based fashion show game that we'll actually be covering later on in this video as a notable mention, so I'll save that for later. DizzyPurple seemingly become completely inactive as of late, with no significant updates on either of their popular games in over a year. And unlike Roblox's top Runway model, which is still playable to this day, Beach House Roleplay has been completely set to private and has been ever since early 2017. We'll get to why in just a moment, but with DizzyPurple seemingly becoming inactive, we most likely will never see it reopening again, but who knows. Also, just before we get into this game fully, I want to mention my character's t-shirt here. It's in a handful of my older recordings, including ones I've shared in a previous episode. Thing is that I have no idea who this character was. I'm pretty sure I only wore it because I thought it was super cool or something. It's not relevant to the game at all, but it's the first time it's come up in this video so far, so I thought I'd bring it up. I had actually uploaded the t-shirt myself, so I must have found it somewhere online, most likely somewhere on Google Images. Thought it looked cool and decided, yep, I want this on a t-shirt, for some reason. Pretty sure I also used it as a profile picture during my YouTube channel's early years in 2014, as seen in this silly Stop a Slender video that I've long since deleted. I did some digging, found out this is the fan character from a series called Maximum Ride by James Patterson, specifically the manga adaptation. It appears to be about a family of humans with genetically engineered wings called the Flock. Sounds cool if you ask me. This is 100% something I found randomly, as this is completely unfamiliar to me. Not gonna lie though, the fan character looks cool as hell in this live action picture. If this is a franchise you're familiar with, let me know if it's good, and maybe I'll check it out sometime in the future. Honestly, I'm just glad it was nothing inappropriate. Anyways, before I get too sidetracked, let's get back to the game. Before being set to private, Beach House Roleplay largely followed the same structure as many other Hangout games at the time, having various avatar customization areas, which the games individually called the hair salon, clothing store, tanning booth, and the plastic surgeon, for changing faces of course, as well as a large swimming pool, a club, a restaurant, etc. But it also includes some more unique additions at the time that really helped set itself apart from other games like it, such as the ability for players to customize the colors of hotel rooms that they were able to rent out, with both a primary and a secondary color. In our original recordings, you can see we went for a combination of deep blue and teal. How nice. The rooms themselves were fairly simple, each of them having a bed, a TV, a computer desk, a bathroom, a balcony, etc. There were 20 of these rooms, enough to account for every player in a full server, of course located within the central hotel building, itself being called the Royal Heights Hotel. We'll get to the rest of the map in just a moment. Another very cool addition were these pets, which were super reactive and genuinely felt unique for the time. You could change their colors, give them silly little hats, feed them, make them show emotion, they can even make them say things. In the recording you can see we've called ours Herobrine, named after the Minecraft urban legend, for whatever reason. As you may have already noticed, we were huge fans of creepypastas back then. Note the Jeff the Killer outfit seen in most of our late 2014 clips. Unfortunately, it appears that Herobrine had died in our hotel room. Rest in power, Herobrine. You would have loved the Minecraft movie. There was also a gems feature in Beach House Roleplay, a sort of currency which would slowly be given to players over time. With this currency, players could buy exclusive clothes, hats, hairs, packages, and even faces that weren't found in the clothing areas around the map. It was a good way of keeping players engaged for a lot longer, and rewarding them for doing so. As if you think about it, most games would just give you all the items for free, which of course is a good thing to some, but without any progression, having access to unlimited items like this would quickly get boring and wouldn't give the players any incentive to return to the game. So in my opinion, this is a very unique combination of features that gave this game some form of replayability. Anyways, the map of Beach House Roleplay was full of locations that opened the door to many roleplay scenarios. Some interesting ones include the motorcycle store, or the Rotorcycle store, which appears to get its design straight out of Guy Fieri's wardrobe. It's obviously a place to get motorcycles. Of course, there was the pet adoption area we just mentioned, where you could obviously get pets from. There was also the Carefree Club, where you could listen to a selection of music like Timber by Pitbull featuring Kesha, Die Young by Kesha, Counting Stars by One Republic, Selfie by the Chainsmokers, etc. Songs that just bring me right back to the early 2010s. Only if someone in the server had the DJ Game Pass, of course. There was also an art gallery where fan art of the game was displayed. I believe this was for an art competition that DizzyPurple had held during the game's earlier months, something I absolutely love when developers do. I honestly adore the way these fan art pictures here look. It really takes me back. This is peak 2010s Roblox right here. And with the constant sound of waves, music, and seagulls in the background, the whole feel and ambience of the map felt so relaxing as well. This is a better example of what I was talking about a few entries ago when I said that boys and girls hangout felt like a holiday destination, because in this instance, it literally is. Beach House Roleplay is definitely a game I remember fondly, and thankfully enough there isn't much in the way of controversy surrounding it, but like most role-playing / hangout games, I'm sure it still had its fair share of online daters. This time, thankfully, I doubt it was encouraged in any way, and it doesn't seem to be as big of a problem as it was in other games. What's good is that, at least to me, Beach House Roleplay isn't known for facilitating odors. Don't get me wrong though, I'm definitely not saying there were none. I doubt the place was completely odor-free. No role-playing / hangout games are. These games just unfortunately attract those type of people. I did find a few examples on both YouTube and on a Roblox forum archive of people discussing odors on the game, but this pales in comparison to the amount of odors you could find find in other games like it. I personally just didn't encounter any, or at least I don't remember doing so. The only real issue I can personally remember and find were that of exploiters, in which the game was apparently incredibly vulnerable to. Exploiters, among other things, would remove entire chunks of the map, give themselves weapons, play inappropriate audio, and the fandom wiki even states that some spammed satanic messages in the game, though I can't find any proof of this. As a direct result of this vulnerability, the game was unfortunately set under review in early 2017, as I mentioned earlier. A few months after that though, the game was set under review again for not having the filtering enabled feature active. A mandatory update Roblox games needed to have enabled starting from that point forward. For those unaware, this update was introduced as a way to improve Roblox's in-game security by preventing clients, i.e. the players, from directly modifying the game elements. Before this change, explorers could easily mess with the game's world and its mechanics, while filtering enabled ensured that only the server, i.e. the game itself, could make these changes. After the update, explorers who tampered with the in-game elements would only affect themselves and no change would be visible to other players. While this actually did reduce the amount of game-breaking exploits, it also unintentionally broke many older games that relied on client-side changes, including Beachhouse Roleplay, since of course they were not originally built with this feature restriction in mind. Because of this, many games affected would need to either be completely remade from the ground up or extensively updated to function under the new change. This update is largely responsible for being the cause of many broken older games that we've seen so far in these videos to stop working, like Heli-Wars, Vampire Hunters, and Build to Survive the Zombies, just to name a few. Even nowadays, working around this feature can be somewhat tricky, but there are plenty of tutorials online about how to do so, which leads us to the working remake of Beachhouse Roleplay that is still up on Roblox to this day. Created by a team called Schofield Studios, it still seems to receive the occasional update, and since it claims to be the most precise remake of the original, it is a perfect way to experience the game in a stable and hopefully odor and explorer free form. This remake even has some of the songs that were in the original game too, although not all of them it seems, but it's really cool how they were able to get some of the full versions of these songs in the modern Roblox remake, like Turn Down For What again, which I listened to with some other players including a friend. Speaking of which actually, I think there was a slight mistake here, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I'm fairly certain the song they've placed in this remake, Monster by Megan Dia, which is one of my favorite songs of all time by the way, the .exe remix to be specific, is actually meant to be The Monster by Eminem featuring Rihanna, as seen in this video here. Again, forgive me if I'm wrong, as the original game is private and Roblox has scoured the audio library, so it's pretty hard for me to prove this. And to be honest, it really isn't important in the end of the day, as the remake is pretty great regardless. Both songs were popular around the same time, and it would make sense for them to both be in a game like this. Who knows, maybe I am wrong. I never went to the Carefree Club in my original recordings and I don't remember which Monster song it was anyhow. It's just something I wanted to point out in case there was a mistake. Anyways, it's not exactly the most active game in the world, maxing 10 daily players on a good day, but it is quite new, being made as recent as mid-2024, so hopefully it grows a bit more sometime in the future. So whether you're trying to rediscover an old favorite of yours, or simply want to experience it for the first time, this remake is definitely the way to go. And just before we wrap this segment up, one cool fact I found out while researching was the original Beachhouse Roleplay was actually made as a replacement to another game called Row and Raise an Epic Hippo, sometime in mid-2013. This is why the website claims it was made in 2010, when this rendition of the game only traces its existence as far back as 2013. Of course, if you remember from a few entries ago, we discussed how developers would oftentimes replace games to bypass the one public game limit that non-Builders Club members had to work around. I discovered this by looking through the oldest available archive of DizzyPurple's profile from the 1st of March 2013 on the Wayback Machine, with there being only a single archive of the game page itself from that day. Outside of Roblox, on YouTube, I was only able to find a sole video of Grow and Raise an Epic Hippo from December of 2012. I tried searching for both that name, the game's ID, and even DizzyPurple as well, specifically looking for results before that time, but found absolutely nothing besides unrelated videos. It's not entirely irrelevant, but I guess it helps remove the common misconception that Beachhouse Roleplay was made in 2010, which even the fandom wiki gets wrong. But I don't blame them really, this is very obscure, and there's not a lot of info on it. In fact, I doubt Raise a Hippo was even the first rendition as well. We'll most likely never know, so let's just move on. Beachhouse Roleplay definitely had a big impact on the Roblox community at the time, and it's a real shame that it's been left in the state that it's in. While it wasn't personally my favorite back then, it was still definitely a childhood favorite for many other players, and when I look back on the time I played it, I now hold it as one of the best games of early 2010s Roblox, and to think we'll probably never get to revisit the original again outside of remakes is kinda sad to think about. Anyways, that's it for Beachhouse Roleplay. Stay tuned later for DizzyPurple's other game, Roblox's top runway model, later on in this video as a notable mention. And don't forget to check out Schofield Studios' remake of Beachhouse Roleplay. Of course, it will be linked in the description alongside the original. Now then, let's move on to the next game. The video is now an hour in length. If you managed to make it this far, then I want to personally thank you so much for sticking around. I truly am grateful for it. Now then, let's get on to War CTF. For this segment, we'll be covering a game that I teased all the way back at the start of the video. Seen in this singular recording and screenshot, which we'll briefly discuss later, from the 28th of July 2012, as well as these two recordings from the 19th of September of the same year, is a game called YeIIIow, created by ScriptTester123 on the 19th of May 2008. Currently, the game sits at 4.3 million visits with over 120,000 favorites as well. While not entirely recognizable nowadays, YeIIIow was supposedly very popular during its prime around 2008-9, apparently being up there as one of the most popular games on the platform at the time. When I played it back in 2012, the game had already amassed a fairly impressive 2.8 million visits. ScriptTester123 has been mostly inactive as of late, and has supposedly been so since the early 2010s. He was unfortunately the target of hackers, it seems, as his most recent profile description states. This description is actually recent, despite his inactivity. Since before early 2024, it was simply just "Hi Reddit." I'm unsure if this older description was the doing of ScriptTester, or someone else with access to the account. But anyways, YeIIIow is obviously a round-based capture the flag game where two teams, brown and green, must fight for the most flag captures in a round. The two teams will be given a handful of tools, weapons, and vehicles to beat one another on each side of the map. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? That's because it clearly draws inspiration from DrewsomeB's Heli-Wars, even sharing a few models from it in fact. But don't get the wrong idea, this isn't a straight up copy of Heli-Wars. There were a few key differences, and we'll get to those in a second. The game is still up to this day, but just like Heli-Wars, the game is entirely broken. This includes the weapons, some of the tools, the flags, the vehicles, and pretty much everything that made the game fun. The game was updated as recent as last year, but that update was most likely the game's description changing from this to this. This is most likely a result of the supposed hack that ScriptTester suffered from. Unfortunately, at this current moment in time, the game is in a completely unplayable state. Though unlike Heli-Wars, the game isn't actually copy locked, meaning it's completely open source to anyone. This is also most likely the result of the hack, as older archives of the webpage show the game is locked. So if you choose to download it, I'd recommend approaching it with some caution and respect for the original creator. But by all means, if you have good intentions, you very much can download a copy of the game, open it in Roblox Studio, and try bringing it to modern Roblox. In fact, I might even give it a try myself at some point, with credits to Scriptmaster himself, of course. That's a potential video idea right there, but no promises. What set YeIIIow apart from Heli-Wars and other games like it were a handful of neat additions, such as an actual rounds feature. Each round lasted 15 minutes in length, and the team with the most flag captures in total would obviously win the round. Though, if you notice in one of my older recordings, the game is actually stuck on the final second for the entire duration of its runtime. So no matter how long we waited or how many captures we got, it would just never end. But the fact it's working nowadays means it was obviously fixed. Kills and deaths weren't counted in this game, meaning the sole and main objective was to capture the enemy's flag. There was of course new ways of killing other players as well, such as the landmines, which can be placed on the ground and would explode if touched, even by a vehicle. A very cool addition I think adds a lot of unique gameplay scenarios. Unfortunately, the tools to spawn these are broken, but I managed to repair the mines themselves and brought them into the workspace and studio. How cool is that? There were also these fixed gun turrets that could be used to shoot incoming vehicles and players. There were only two of these turrets, one for each base. I like to think they were a way of keeping players from leaving the base unattended, problem I remember facing a lot in Heli-Wars. But again, these are broken too. Vehicle-wise, YeIIIow had 4 that could be used by players. There were 2 land-based vehicles, a simple car and a tank, possibly similar to the SAM tank seen in Heli-Wars Winter Mayhem, as well as 2 airborne vehicles, both a helicopter, which functioned pretty much identically to the one seen in Heli-Wars, and a plane, which was a faster alternative to the helicopter, but with guns and a singular bomb. Similar to before, I had no idea how to operate these vehicles. In fact, in the recording you can see that we tried to drive the car, but we didn't know what key to press to get it going. That, or we just assumed the game was broken. So we got out and started walking. We were just too used to the simple WASD key controlled cars seen in most games at that time. And again, all of these vehicles are broken just like most of the game. I decided that fixing everything would probably take a bit, and it's not entirely worthwhile at the moment. This video's taken long enough time to make already. So we'll save fixing everything for another time. Now then, I just want to briefly bring up the singular screenshot that I have of this game. It's quite the specimen. It's one of my favorite older screenshots of mine. From July 28th, it really encapsulates what kind of era this was. The era of creepypastas and what have you. My glowing brain geniusness of a mind must have thought I had actually discovered the Slender Man himself in Roblox. So scary! Though it's probably just a guest without a hat. But no, this is solid evidence of the Slender Man in Roblox, guys. It's the new Roblox ARG. Get with it. You can tell this was around the time stories like Slender Man really began to kick off. It definitely caused my younger self's creativity to go wild and assume there was fantastical explanation to something that ended up just being another player. But honestly, despite how silly it seems now, I do miss times like that. Roblox just felt so much more mysterious back then, at least to me. Now, just like Chthonix's haunted hospital from earlier, fighting this game was another big personal win for me, since for the longest time I had no recollection of what this game could have been. At first I assumed it to be another version of Heli-Wars, this time taking place in a forest. It would make sense really considering the 2 versions of Heli-Wars Heli-Wars I knew of beforehand, but this wasn't the case. Still, I had the assumption this could be connected to Heli-Wars. Again, it's clearly inspired by it, even if not directly by name, but I really had no idea where to start with my search. Firstly, I of course checked for the badges of players I met in game. Honestly, it's always the first thing I do when I try to find games. It has worked on occasion, but I got nothing. And I even tried searching through the favorites list of said players as well, but again I got nothing. There was no way I'd guess the name of it either. It's not entirely unique at all, and it's definitely not something I remembered, so searching for it on Roblox itself wasn't going to work. Plus, even if I did know the name to an extent, Roblox for some reason censors the word CTF, which literally means capture the flag, so it's not even possible to begin with. I did try some vague search terms like green versus brown, brown versus green, and what have you, but this didn't really reveal much. So same as before, I tried searching outside of Roblox, but as I said, I had no idea what the name of this game could actually be. I searched very vague phrases and in turn got very vague results. Of course, even now, I was still under the assumption that this game could be connected to Heli-Wars, but with no sign of the game appearing anywhere in my searches, I was starting to think I'd never find it. I was getting really desperate at this point. I got so desperate, in fact, I even tried to find other Roblox videos from the day I played it, hoping that someone else had filmed a specific game as well, like the stars aligned or some shit. But obviously nothing came of this. I almost considered not even covering this game at all, and I even did stop searching for it. That was until I was doing the research for the Heli-Wars segment at the start of the video, where I had found a list of popular Roblox military games created before the year 2009 on the Roblox fandom wiki. I was actually trying to find other Heli-Wars games to see if there was anything that I'd missed, but during which something caught my eye, something that looked incredibly familiar to me. I clicked on it, and lo and behold, this was War CTF. It was right in front of me. This is how I found it. After almost losing all hope and even stopping my search, I had randomly come across it on a random page of the Roblox wiki while I was researching Heli-Wars. This wiki page had plenty of information on the game that I needed for my research, including a link to the game itself, the developer's name, and even some gameplay info as well. So I can now rest assured that after all these years, I've finally found the game. As I said, this was another big win for me, as before finding it, the game in these recordings was just something I randomly played and moved on from sometime in 2012 with little to no memory of what it was. And I think I almost gave up searching for it on multiple occasions because of that, just to find it here in the most obvious place. Don't get me wrong, I am happy to have found it, but I'm just a bit bitter. I put all that effort into finding it just for it to be right here in front of me the whole time, but let's move on. There is a lesser known remake of War CTF created by a user called Rinpix on Halloween of 2020. Despite it's now nearly 5 years of age, the game has only amassed over 2,000 visits, with not even 100 favorites alongside it. And while it's not the most faithful remake, as it uses new models, mechanics, controls, etc., it still overall functions identical to the original, so this is definitely a good place to check out if you want to feel how the original game was, despite the differences. Now speaking of remakes, in fact, since it's not possible to search for this game through normal means on the Roblox website, as I mentioned earlier, finding any popular remakes was tough. The only way I was able to find this one was because Rinpix had made a post about it on the Roblox dev forum. This was the only proper and somewhat popular remake of the game that I could actually find, and since searching for War CTF is heavily and probably unintentionally suppressed, it's hard for this remake to get a consistent player base. So I'd definitely go check it out if you're familiar with the original game. Now then, just before we finish this segment, and just like the last entry, War CTF wasn't always known as such. What would be called War CTF was once briefly a completely different game called Build a Car and Make It to VIP. Obviously a car building game which, fun fact, Scripttester has actually re-uploaded to his profile. Isn't that neat? Surprisingly, it works decently well. I don't think I had much in the way of errors at all during my playthrough. It would stay in this form for 3 months until mid-July 2008, in which the game would be changed to a more primitive version of what we know today as War CTF. It's somewhat similar to the recent version, though it lacked trees, turrets, and the map was a lot thinner. This version has also been re-uploaded to Scripttester's profile. While it's not exactly the most well-known game in this entire video, War CTF still had a somewhat successful run, as short-lived as it was. Unfortunately, it appears just to be another footnote in Roblox's long history book, but I'm glad to have been able to both play it and of course record it while it was still somewhat popular, so at least it wasn't completely forgotten. I'm also glad to have finally been able to find it again after all these years, despite the long search. Make sure to check it out, try even fixing it yourself if you can, and also give Rinpix's remake of the game a shot as well. Anyways, moving on from War CTF now, see you all in the next game. As a quick notable mention, I want to discuss a game called Cartwright into Epic Portal, created by a user called YeIIIow, spelled with 3 capital I's, on the 19th of June 2009. This is definitely a game I recall playing sometime in 2012, but what's funny is that I don't have any of my own footage of this game whatsoever. I only have vague memories of it. I thought this could be another case of me dreaming the whole thing up, just like Cartwright into a scary cave tycoon from the last video. That was until I randomly came across a Twitter/X thread of 2 users discussing this exact game, with one of the users tweeting a link to the game itself, which confirmed to me that what I remembered was in fact real. Before stumbling upon this thread, the only parts of this game that I vaguely remembered was the cards going through these series of multicolored tunnels, and oddly enough I specifically recall hearing Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley in this game. Although I could just be misremembering it entirely, as I've seen no footage of this song playing in this game so far. The game currently sits at over 24 million visits, with just over 45,000 favorites on top of that. Surprisingly, this game still seems to have the occasional few players. At one point during the making of this video, it got to 23 players in total, and while that's not a lot for a game made in 2009 that's barely been touched, that's very cool to see. When I joined the game though, it had obviously gone through a few major changes from what I remember. I don't recall it ever looking like how it does here. I always remembered it being something like this. Excuse my poor attempt at a diagram. The players would start in a little room with a car at the top here. Said car would be sent across tunnels with varying appearances. That tunnel would be connected to a little drop down area to the next stage, and that would repeat in a sort of zigzag pattern. Again, I could just be thinking of a completely different game altogether, but older footage of Cartwright into Epic Portal does seem to point towards this game being what I was thinking. And I also do recall there being something outside of the tunnels, what looks to be an obby course in the background for one. But wait, this may be the original game, but it's definitely not the version I recall playing. Where was Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley? A song that was definitely still popular around the time I'm assuming I played this. Something told me I wasn't just making it up, as that's a very specific thing to remember. Now, if you recall from the last episode, I stumbled upon a YouTube video of a very similar looking game while searching for the SpongeBob obby by no alias, and the title of the video was called Be Eaten by SpongeBob and Escape. The existence of this video, its title, and its description tell me that perhaps Cartwright into Epic Portal could have been copied, or could even be a copy of another game itself. Perhaps the version of the game that I remember, the one with Never Gonna Give You Up in the background, was actually one of these copies rather than being entirely made up in my mind. As much as I really didn't need to now that I have what I believe to be the original game, my curiosity got the better of me and I decided to keep digging. Going back to that clip from the last episode, the person recording, 3 Griffs West, appears to make reviews for Roblox games, but he's long since stopped uploading, with his last video being from June 26, 2012. One of these reviews included the Be Eaten by SpongeBob and Escape game from June 9th. The game looks to be identical to what the original was like from around that time with barely any differences. You may be wondering, what's with the misleading game name? Well, these types of games were and still are very common on Roblox. They're essentially a way to either get large amounts of place visits on your profile or to make as much money as possible through game passes. The developers, in massive quotations, would steal other popular games and use fake thumbnails and titles as a way to clickbait users into joining. It appears that 3 Griffs fell for a lot of these games in his videos. Now, upon watching 3 Griffs' video on the Be Eaten by SpongeBob game all the way through and exactly 2 minutes and 25 seconds in, this is heard. That's right, I managed to find evidence of what I've remembered. Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley playing for a brief moment in the background. The song appears to have come from this reset tool in 3 Griff's inventory, and to think it was a video I completely overlooked and simply glanced over at in the last episode. This was a great find for me. A specific memory I thought I must have completely conjured up was found, but this video doesn't exactly have any links back to the original game page itself, meaning I had to keep digging. Unfortunately, there's no badges given at all to track down, and if this is a clone, it's most likely it's been replaced or taken down, so it's probably been lost to time. Looking towards the description, it appears that 3 Griff believes that Be Eaten by SpongeBob and Escape was a copycat of another game similarly titled Be Eaten by a Toilet. 3 Griff actually made a separate video on Be Eaten by a Toilet a day prior, though I'm fairly certain it's just the exact same game but with a different title. The description of this video states how he was annoyed that the game was not as the title suggests, and apparently he believes it's a lame Hangout game instead of a Cartwright one, as he spawned outside of the map, allowing him to easily access the winner area. Unlike the later video, this one actually captured someone in-game being awarded badges. 4 of them to be exact, to a user called Juliana32000. Looking through her profile led me to find these exact badges, along with tons of others, which we'll get to later. They were for a game called 1000 Ways to Pie by Supercolin. Now this was actually a game I recognized and did in fact play at some point. It's essentially a collection of various ways to die, as seen in this old YouTube video here. Just to be double sure I was correct, I asked SuperColin himself about the game's history on both his YouTube channel and his Twitter profile, but so far he's not gotten back to me. Also, I was able to locate more footage of SuperColin's version by searching for 1000 Ways to Pie's game ID, and a few of these videos actually had Never Gonna Give You Up in the background as well. Also, some of these videos even dropped more of this game's random clickbaity titles, like Push Bob Down the Portal, whoever Bob is. Now, SuperColin was known at one point for creating clickbait games, as we've seen, but actually began to create his own unique experiences following 2013, which brings us back to 1000 Ways to Pie. At the time of writing, the original version of this game was placed under review and has been stuck like that ever since, but lucky enough, SuperColin had actually re-uploaded it onto another account of his, and while it's broken to an extent, you can still play through it and experience what it was mostly like. As I said before, I'll leave both the original game page as well as this one in the description so that you can all check it out. Editing note, I actually just found out that according to the Roblox fandom wiki, 1000 Ways to Pie isn't even SuperColin's game either. It was a copy of another game simply called 1,000,000 Ways to Die by Lambor009. I won't get into it just for this video's sake, but it's something I thought I'd at least mention since we're on the topic. I'll save this one for another video. But back to Cart Ride into Epic Portal, or whatever the original is actually called. Speaking of which, now that I think about it, I'm not even entirely sure if Cart Ride into Epic Portal was even the original itself. The only videos that mention the game by name have all been made after the year 2014. Of course, there may be videos from before then that didn't mention the name, but there's no way of telling them apart from a clone, if not outright stated. Unfortunately, I don't think I'll be able to ever know. I'm actually starting to think that SuperColin's version might be the original itself. But again, at the time, and no offense to him, SuperColin was known for stealing a lot of games, so I'm not entirely sure about this either. However, while researching, I did notice something interesting. The badge giver seen at the end of YeIIIow's game also appear in the so-called clone by SuperColin. However, unlike in YeIIIow's game, the badge givers in SuperColin's version actually function and award badges, as shown in this YouTube video here. The badges are credited to SuperColin, some of them being the badges that we looked at earlier. It's strange to see the same badge givers used in both games, but only working in the clone, or at least what I thought was the clone. My conclusion at the end of all of this is that the game isn't the creation of either YeIIIow or SuperColin. There may have been an even older version of this game I've not been able to track down, one without these badge givers and possibly still out there waiting to be found. My reasoning behind that is the fact that these badge givers don't look like they were meant to be a part of this game. They look like they've just been thrown in for shits and giggles. But to be completely fair, for a game I only vaguely remembered from 13 years ago, I feel like I've uncovered quite a lot, and while it's not the most conclusive answer when it comes to whether YeIIIow's is the original, I'm still fairly certain the one I played was SuperColin's Be Eaten by a Toilet. Or whatever silly ass name it went by at the time. Like I said, this search was really like finding a needle in a haystack, as I didn't really have much to go off on, but even if I can't be completely sure, I'm just glad I was able to back up what I remembered and to confirm I wasn't just imagining it. So anyways, that's it for both Cart Ride into an Epic Portal by YeIIIow, as well as the briefly mentioned 1000 Ways to Pie by SuperColin. Moving on, sort of. You'll see. Moving on. Despite this being a notable mention, we do in fact have footage of this game. The reason it's here in the video is because it does tie in with the previous entry, which we'll get to soon. The search for this game in particular was the most research heavy one in the entire video, and to be honest I don't even think I've gotten the correct game in the end. There was just so many dead ends that I encountered. Since this is a short segment, I'll try not to go into too much detail, but I'll make note of anything I deem important in my search and I'll try not to gloss over anything interesting, as there were a lot of things I uncovered during the search, such as old abandoned games, profiles of players who've completely moved on from the platform, etc. So, the game seen here in this video from the 22nd of July 2012 has been a mystery to me ever since I played it all those years ago. It appears to be a fashion show game of sorts with various hats, hair, clothes, and what have you around a brightly coloured map. It doesn't seem to be a round-based fashion show game like Dress to Impress or Top Roblox's Runway model, instead being more of a free-for-all or even a role-playing type of game where judges, contestants, and spectators are able to come and go as they pleased. A lot of these type of games at the time weren't always round-based, but rather almost like little hangout places where random players or a group of friends could meet up, hold their own little fashion shows, or just make and rate one another's outfits for fun. Due to Roblox's lower expectations of game quality at the time, there was tons of these less advanced games. Anyhow, I got straight to searching, and as per every search so far, I tried skimming through the profiles of the players I met in the video, looking specifically for badges that led back to this game, or to check their favorites list for the game itself, but got nothing. So I decided to look for some old footage of it on YouTube, which would be where most of the search would take place, looking for videos near the time I played it with keywords like fashion, show, etc. There was obviously a lot of different games that appeared here, since I wasn't exactly being the most specific, but going off the fact that this game does appear to be somewhat popular, I thought it would show up eventually. After a bunch of scrolling and tightening the date to be closer to my original recording, I eventually found this one here, what appears to be the exact same game. A video by Emele Stachio called Fashion Show Runway on Roblox. She's seen rating outfits of people who stumble onto the runway, but eventually goes into the dressing area herself, where I can see this is in fact the same game. At 46 seconds in, Emele says the name of this mysterious game, simply called Go to the Movies. This told me that this had to be another instance of a cloned game with a clickbait title, but with no links or anything other than the name she gave, I had to move on. With the title Go to the Movies now in mind, I tried searching for videos of games with that title, and I was able to find one that got really close to my original recording date, a day before mine in fact. A video simply called Go to the Movies on Roblox by YeIIIow. Just like before, this looks to be the exact same game as seen in my footage. At some point in the video, YeIIIow seems to have touched a badge giver here. This actually appeared in the video by Emele too, but it appears neither of them actually got the badge as I checked through their profiles, meaning the giver was broken. Or it meant the game was a clone, and the badge itself wasn't a part of this game specifically, meaning the badge giver tried to give the players a badge that didn't even come from the game that they were actively playing, which isn't possible on Roblox. So unfortunately, this was yet another dead end for now. Taking a step back, I decided to stick with just Roblox videos that had the word fashion in the title from around the time I played in my search terms to hopefully give us some more broader results. While again, there were plenty of Roblox games that had similar appearances to the one I was looking for, there was one video that sort of stuck out to me. Instead of being just a raw upload directly from Roblox as most of these videos were, this one instead had an intro. It piqued my curiosity, and once I watched it, it turns out this was also a video of the game. What are the chances? While the video itself doesn't exactly reveal much either, as it's just a 4.5 minute long video of friends playing Roblox, I decided to look into it a little bit more to perhaps see if I could locate the game this way. The creator of this video, Electricide, looks to be a very talented graphic designer. I actually got nosy and I looked into her account, but it appears that she's completely vanished from Roblox and YouTube. On her profile, I found a collection of really well made games for the time, as well as a photo gallery of her and her friends. As much as I don't want to intrude on anyone's personal memories, seeing this really made me think about my own experiences with Roblox, with all the friends I once knew and the games I once played. It was very interesting and kind of sad in a way to see something like this. She states herself that she would return to this game whenever she felt down, and it really made me think that I usually do the same with my own old footage whenever I'm feeling like that. So in a way, it felt sort of relatable. The longer I was here, the more it occurred to me that I'm probably the first person to visit this game and even her entire profile in over a decade. If it wasn't for me stumbling upon this random YouTube video, it would have stayed completely forgotten. It was really cool seeing all the drawings, the games, and what have you that she created. A lot of these really took me back to the early 2010s and the design trends that came from the era. While it didn't reveal what I was looking for, I've been thinking about this part of the search. There's probably so many people like Electricide whose work is now abandoned and completely forgotten. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to overstep by spotlighting their personal memories of course, but I also feel like some of these creative works deserve to be remembered. And even though I don't know this person, I hope she remembers the good times like the friends, the games, and the happy moments on Roblox that she had, rather than the supposed hack she makes mention of or the moments that she felt down. But anyhow, this was just a small side tangent, but it left an impression on me, so I decided to at least mention it. Let's get back on track. Another video that came up during the search was this one here. It appears to be the exact same game, but it has a black color scheme. Again, this led nowhere, but it was a cool find nonetheless. I eventually encountered this video here from 2013 by a user called Somebody Somewhere, which revealed a name: Become a Famous Supermodel. After searching for this name on both YouTube, Roblox, and even the Wayback Machine, nothing of note came up and it was another dead end. At this point, I had already moved on to the research for the next segment, as I knew this one would probably take a while. But just out of curiosity, I decided to give Roblox's search engine a shot. I knew of course it would take a miracle to find it here, but I didn't really know where else to look. Obviously, this didn't reveal anything, but it gave me some time to, I guess, reflect. During which, I found a couple of games that again just put me back into those nostalgic feelings of how Roblox used to be like. I encountered so many abandoned and forgotten corners of the platform that all possibly once had players making happy memories, but now just sit abandoned. It was actually sort of peaceful in a way. I can't explain why, but I just love the way some of these old games look. As I said previously, it's that certain low qualityness that sort of brings me back. I'm happy that these places have been preserved, and the fact that we can still access them to this very day is super cool to me. This game here is one I actually managed to find a video of on YouTube. I really enjoyed all 4 pixels of this video. This is just my incarnation of my Roblox nostalgia. Big up Windows 7. After I finished this break, I went back to my YouTube search, and after a bunch of scrolling, I started noticing a few videos of a particular game that appeared to have a cobblestone-y texture throughout the map. I took a closer look, and this also appeared to be our mystery fashion show game. Of course, drastically different to what it was in my video, so obviously I missed it the first time around, but it was an interesting lead regardless. One of these cobblestone games actually had a link that led to a game simply called Rainbow Fashion Show by Cool Colin 360. It appeared we were finally getting somewhere. The game has been completely remade from the ground up as it looks nothing like it does in this video. It has a darker color scheme and it feels a lot more empty and spacious than the game used to look like. While the game itself was a great lead so far, it didn't really reveal much at all, and for all I knew, this could have been another clone. But I did notice something in the game's description, however. Cool Colin states that his game was stolen, and he says these clones got a lot of attention, meaning it's possible I could have played one of these clones. Near the end of the description, he mentions a few names of people who supposedly stole his game. Taymaster, I don't know how to say that properly, Drew20, and finally, Super Colin. This told me all I needed to know. Seeing how I just finished writing the previous segment before this one, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that the version that I played was probably the clone by Super Colin. It just made sense. This is when I came full circle. Remember the name Go to the Movies from earlier? The name that I completely overlooked? It could still lead somewhere, so I did a little bit more digging. As much as this could have been a stretch, I wanted to just see if this would reveal anything, since I knew Super Colin was in fact involved with this. I tried to view a snapshot of his profile on the Wayback Machine from around the time I played to see what active games he had at the time, but there were no snapshot taken during the entire month of July, with the closest one being from August, but it led nowhere. Then using the name Go to the Movies, I tried finding a snapshot of the link here. Again, huge stretch. I was met with this snapshot from the 22nd of an actual game under the name Go to the Movies. It was made by Super Colin, and the game ID looked really familiar to me. This was 1000 Ways to Pi. Again. Not only was this 1000 Ways to Pi, but the game was in fact known as Go to the Movies during the time I played it in my original footage, meaning the game seen in these two YouTube videos from earlier, same game I believe to be the one I played, are possibly the clone by Super Colin. Furthermore, I was able to find this video of Super Colin's game with the game ID again, though clearly with a map change, from the day I played it where the description has a link back to Go to the Movies. My theory is that the game with this map was originally meant to be titled Become a Famous Supermodel, one of the other names from the search if you remember. Then, on July 21st, the title was changed to Go to the Movies, but the map itself wasn't updated right away. I also found another name through a video from the same day, Watch SpongeBob or Any Other Movie, but since it involves movies as well, I reckon it's just Super Colin experimenting with more clickbait titles. I then played the game the next day, likely during a short window when the game still had this old fashion show map. Later that same day, the map changed to what's seen in this YouTube video again. It's definitely a stretch, but based on everything I've encountered, this theory would explain why the version I played looked the way it did while still fitting into the timeline of updates and name changes. So to me, I believe that the game I had played in this video was 1000 Ways to Pi. That or there was a completely different clone that I've entirely overlooked. But this makes the most sense, at least to me. With that now somewhat out of the way, that takes us back to Cool Colin 360's game, which I now believe to be the original. As of 2025, the game sits at a mostly impressive 194.1 thousand visits, with just over 5,000 favorites as well. The reason I think it now looks completely different is because of how many times it was stolen. In fact, the creator placed a photo of himself in this new version so the players would know who made it. Not like the thieves can just remove that, but it's the thought that matters. I decided to search for the game's ID to hopefully find a little more footage of what it once looked like before this iteration. The first video I found had the name Robloxian Fashion Show, a different name, but it wasn't that too dissimilar from Rainbow Fashion Show, meaning this game was renamed during the reconstruction and it once went by a different name. Looking up the name Robloxian Fashion Show on YouTube led me to find even more videos of Cool Colin's game. One of these videos showed a user collecting a badge, this badge being the exact same one from earlier, but it actually worked this time. The badge led back to this game specifically, meaning that Cool Colin's game was in fact the original. Cool Colin does appear to still be active as of 2025, but the Rainbow Fashion Show hasn't received any attention in nearly a decade, though there isn't exactly any bugs in the game. The only one I can think of would be these hat removers. They don't remove player hats at all, since items players now wear are called accessories, not hats. These removers are specifically looking for items with the instance name hats, but that can be entirely overlooked as it's a common problem in older games. And since the hats around the map are still using the old instance name, it's only the player's accessories that won't be removed. Anyways, the game is incredibly basic and there's minimal scripting. There's also a collection of clothes, hats, hairs, accessories, and what have you. Definitely not as detailed as the previous map, but it gets the idea across. I could see some players back in the day having a blast here. For such a simple game, you would never see something like this getting popular on the platform nowadays. There's been such a change in the expectations of how a Roblox game should look like at a minimum level. Something like this would fly completely under the radar in modern Roblox. I believe Cool Colin's game went through a couple of themes during its lifetime. Of course that may include the black one from earlier, the cobblestone version of course, but I've also seen a beach and even a supposed slimed theme version too. This tells me at some point the game could have appeared the way it does in Super Colin's clone, and it was just stolen when it looked like that. I also believe the game may have had another name at some point as well. In this Roblox talk show video from the 2nd of June 2012, Cool Colin himself makes a guest appearance. Whether where the host mentions a game he made, but calls it America's Top Model / Roblox Fashion Show. But the game is linked down below in its description, so it is just the same game. As much as I feel like there's tons more to discuss, I did say I'd make this short.
So that was a fucking lie.
And while it hasn't exactly been short, I think it's about time we wrap this up. Again, 1000 ways to pie. This may not be an answer I'm 100% confident with, but I'm happy nonetheless I've gotten as close as I have. Same as before, it's really interesting and sort of funny to me that I could have unknowingly played SuperCollin's game twice. I'm also happy that I was able to shed light on the original version of this game, and to give CoolCollin360 the credit he deserves. I'm also glad to have been able to find so many interesting things during my search. The fact I was able to find so much, including abandoned games, profiles, channels, and even what I believe to be the original game is what matters to me, and for that I'm satisfied. But with that said, that's it for Rainbow / Robloxian Fashion Show by CoolCollin360. And again, SuperCollin's 1000 ways to pie. For good this time. Let's move on. As another notable mention, I wanted to briefly discuss another one of my favorite older Roblox games, Top Roblox's Runway model, created by DizzyPurple on June 20th, 2014. DizzyPurple, as some of you may remember, also created Beach House Roleplay, which we discussed earlier. At the time of writing, Top Roblox's Runway model has reached an incredible 135 million visits, with just over 700,000 favorites on top of that. At some point in time, around 2014 to 2015, Top Roblox's Runway model was incredibly popular, up there with other greats of that era, such as Roblox High School, Mad Murderer, Vampire Hunters, Stop It Slender, etc. This game is probably one of the most well-known entries in this video so far. Now unfortunately, it's only going to be a notable mention rather than a full segment, as I accidentally lost nearly all of my footage of it when I cleared my old Windows 7 PC from 2013. The only remaining footage that I have of this game that you could consider from older Roblox would be these two mobile screenshots from sometime in mid-2016, taken during the Imagination event that this game was a part of. Also, I did find the game sitting in my deleted 2013 accounts favorite list, using a neat game that I found that lets you view deleted accounts. It was really nice to see Top Roblox's Runway model sitting here. There wasn't much other favorite games on this profile, so it's good to see that I actually enjoyed this one. It's just unfortunate how I didn't manage to recover any footage of it from this time. I'm just happy I was able to play this game when it first came out, with this account becoming inactive in December of 2014. As much as I would love to dive deep into my own personal experiences with this game, and believe me, I will, I won't have much of my own footage to share along with it. However, even with that limitation, I still want to discuss this game, as it is in fact one of my absolute favorite Roblox games of all time. Anyhow, Top Roblox's Runway model, initially known as just Roblox's Top Model before August of 2017, has a very basic premise and objective. It's a fashion show game where each player is tasked with designing an outfit within a set time frame based on a randomly chosen theme. At the start of each round, 3 players are chosen to be judges. The remaining players are transported to a large dressing room area stocked with clothes, hats, and accessories, where they have exactly 100 seconds to create their outfits to match with the theme. Once the time is up, the judges review each outfit and vote for the one they think best matches the theme. The player with the most votes at the end of the round would of course win, and would be rewarded points. With these points, the players could unlock gears and effects to go along with their outfits for future rounds. Also, there was a return of the pets from Beach House Roleplay, in the form of a game pass, using the exact same emotion and hat system as seen in that game. You were able to choose between a selection of 6 of these pets, not including the 2 additional bunny recolors, who themselves could be customized to match the theme alongside the player. Quite the contrast from the previous entry, which was a simple role-playing-esque fashion show game, whereas this game was actually round-based and had an objective. Community-wise, the game was incredibly popular, with tons of fans even in the game's first starting months, with a huge collection of videos covering the game, including simple gameplay, outfit tutorials, and even full-on series, as well as a huge abundance of fan art displayed throughout the map, all similar to the ones seen in Beach House Roleplay. The game truly became iconic, and I guarantee even a few new players know of this game and its impact. The game played a part in a few events throughout its lifetime, including the Winter Games and the Hotel Transylvania 2 events of 2015, as well as the Imagination event from 2016, the one I mentioned earlier. All these events gave the map a themed appearance based on what the event was about, as you can see in my old mobile screenshots, though the Hotel Transylvania 2 event's only map changes was a couple of posters for the film throughout the map. And speaking of the map, it was definitely memorable, being brightly lit, colourful, and filled with tons of hallmarks of early 2010s Roblox. It definitely resembles that of other fashion show games from before, like the ones we saw in the last entry, but it also helped shape how other round-based fashion show games would work on modern Roblox going forward. And while it's not the most detailed game in the world compared to the others that we have nowadays, the map still felt fun, large, and clearly made with care and purpose. I've always loved how large and somewhat open this map was. Sometimes in these older games, developers usually wouldn't include much outside the playable area, letting players just look into the empty skybox, sort of making it feel like the map exists in its own tiny realm, floating in space. For me, that instantly brings back memories of exploring games on Roblox, some popular, some completely unknown, just seeing what each corner of the platform had to offer, going down rabbit holes of places from varying eras parts of the platform made by countless people just like me, seeing what they had come up with. There's something about this design choice that makes each map feel like its own tiny world. It's hard to describe, but seeing it always reminds me of that. And to me, that was one of the most fun parts of playing back then. Oh, and while we're on the topic of the map, and as a little side note, it's actually possible to go through the ceiling in the lobby as it has no collision. I'm unsure as to why, but you can. I remember discovering this completely by accident while climbing on the result mannequins at spawn, and then jumping on top of this wall. It doesn't exactly lead anywhere other than the void, but it's a neat little secret that I'm sure some of you didn't know. Anyways. Just a heads up before I continue further, I'm about to mention a bunch of bugs that Top Roblox's Runway model used to face. During the writing of this script, the game actually received a pretty major update that fixed a lot of what I'm about to discuss. When the update was pushed, I had already written the majority of this segment, so I'm just going to keep what I've written and just have a little disclaimer at the top of the screen. I will mention the update later in more detail near the end of the segment, just be advised that some of these things have already been fixed. Anyways. As of the time of writing, while the game is still playable to an extent, a lot of parts of it are completely broken. This includes the game passes, such as the VIP pass, which means players will not have to glitch through the VIP only door if they want to access the VIP room. Similarly, both the sprint game pass, which obviously let you run faster, and the pet game pass I just mentioned are completely broken as well. The core gameplay still functions, though it's very inconsistent, as it can easily break after a certain point. This usually happens when the players are being moved onto the runway to begin the voting process. The game sometimes just gives up and the players become stuck in the waiting room. With DizzyPurple becoming inactive as I mentioned before, it's unlikely that any of this will be fixed, but thankfully there is a vote to fix button that resets the entire map and helps to prevent the game from completely soft-locking itself. Unfortunately, this button has some problems of its own. At any point during the round, the game will just restart, caused by players abusing an oversight in this button. I believe it's caused by pressing the button, resetting your character, then pressing it again. The button sees the player as a new person, so it counts it as another vote. Eventually, it causes the game to restart. So the button designed to stop the game from breaking, breaks itself. Go figure. Now, the game was updated as recently as last year, it seems. If you remember, so was Beach House Roleplay, and I don't believe either was anything major. The update number in the title and the description of Top Roblox's Runway model has been the same since 2017. Just know the gameplay has been the exact same since then. Even during its prime, from 2014 to 17, the game wasn't without its problems, unfortunately. Of course, there was a lot of exploiters, as per usual these older games, though it was very common to come across an exploiter in this game specifically. This was mostly due to how simple and popular the game was, though this is just what I remember. I'm not sure if it was actually that big of a problem. Another issue that I personally saw a lot was that of biased judges. It was very common to encounter judges who would be incredibly unfair while using the voting system, giving certain players, oftentimes their friends, high points while leaving the rest of the contestants with nothing, or in some cases voting everyone on the runway with a low score. This especially didn't help if there was only one judge in the round, in the event that the server was smaller. Thankfully there was a vote to kick judge button, but I've rarely seen it ever been used in game, and I'm unsure if it even works nowadays. Also, this is more than a nitpick than anything else. Sometimes players, specifically newer players who didn't know what they were doing, would not create an outfit based on a theme and would instead just wear anything they wanted, most of the time just putting on every single hat in the dressing room, creating abominations like this. It's possible most of these players are playing on mobile. As seen in one of my only surviving old footage of this game from earlier, the theme name was completely absent from the UI, which you can see on the PC version, meaning they won't know the theme unless they intentionally looked up at the big billboard with the theme on it inside the dressing room, which 9 times out of 10 they didn't even notice was there. While being a completely innocent act, this would oftentimes be incredibly annoying to the other players in the lobby. Sometimes these people would somehow receive the most votes from the judges and win the round. Despite all these problems that Top Roblox's Runway model faced and is currently facing, it does still see some active players. And whilst mostly people just revisiting an old childhood game, there are some occasional new visitors experiencing it for the first time. And with the rise of games like Dress to Impress, fashion show games on Roblox, even old ones such as Top Roblox's Runway model, are gaining a decent amount of traction from newer players. At one point during the making of this video, it got to 103 players in total. It quickly went down after that, but I was lucky enough to grab a quick screenshot of it beforehand. Obviously that wasn't as populated as it once was during its prime, but still, for an older game like this that doesn't receive any updates, that's very lucky to see, and I'm glad it still exists somewhat in the Roblox community to this day. Moving on. Now, on a more personal note, I vividly remember my first experience with this game. In mid to late 2014, near the end of my very first round, I looked up into the spectator window and saw a player jumping up and down, swearing in the chat, clearly in the middle of an argument with someone else. This is when I discovered you could swear on Roblox, at least at the time. You see, back then, the Roblox chat filter was much less strict than it is now. Simply adding an asterisk to a cursed word would bypass the filter entirely. As much as that was my first impression of Top Roblox's Runway model, it thankfully didn't deter me from playing it and shortly became one of my favorite games on the entire platform, as I've said. Speaking of which, and do forgive me for sounding corny, when looking back on my time with Top Roblox's Runway model, it brings back both a flood of memories and feelings of a specific era on the Roblox platform and the internet in general. It's just the way it looks. Games back then had these bright and oftentimes neon colors, low quality textures and decals, and they always had the most simple game level and UI design. These games, most of them being little experiments and side projects from aspiring developers, had a certain charm to them that's hard to replicate nowadays. They were almost, dare I say, liminal in a way, as the platform was constantly changing in its earlier years. Again, forgive me for the corniness. For me, this game and many others like it bring me back to a simpler moment in my life, where I didn't have much worries outside of school or whatever. Top Roblox's Runway model had that exact charm. It reminds me of that carefree era, specifically the summer of 2014 when it was released, where I was becoming a lot more active on the Roblox platform. Anyway, sob story aside, as much as I couldn't use my own footage for this segment, I hope my description of the game did it enough justice. I can't stress how much I loved this game when I was younger, and honestly I've been looking forward to talk about it. If you've got the time and you'd like to experience what a game from the 2014 era of Roblox was like, I'd definitely recommend checking it out if there's a server up, as even now it usually sees a few active players every day. Now that's where I would have ended this segment, but during this video's long production, Top Roblox's Runway model actually received an update. Crazy, I know. That definitely wasn't on my 2025 Roblox bingo card. The update makes both the VIP and Pets Game Pass free to use without the need to purchase them. Anti-exploit and abuse safeguards have also been put into place to hopefully prevent continuous abuse of the vote to fix button. And new UI and music have been implemented as well. How cool is that? DizzyPurple was even active on the Schofield Studios group, the people who remade DizzyPurple's other game, Beach Us Roleplay, if you remember, where he praised the team's work for keeping the game alive. But with that update comes with some bad news, at least for me. My Top Roblox's Runway model stats were completely wiped. I'm not sure how it happened, but I'm hoping that DizzyPurple, if you're watching this, would it be possible to return these stats? Here's a photo I got before it was wiped, if that helps. Oh well. Anyhow, with that said, we'll need to move on. I can't state enough how iconic this game was in the Roblox community. As I said, it was a perfect example of what Roblox games were like from this era. Brightly coloured, simple, and with less corporate feel to it that a lot of Roblox games have nowadays. In a way, the game's imperfections made it feel more real and down to earth. And partly because of that, as well as my absolute love for Roblox fashion and making outfits at the time, it was by far one of my absolute favourite Roblox games of all time. So, again, I definitely recommend you guys go check this one out. It's not as fast paced or as clean as newer games, but still a shining example of the platform's history, and I'm happy to have grown alongside it. Now, without any more delay, let's move on to the final game. To finish off this video, hopefully in the next hour, I want to talk about what's probably the most well-known game on this entire list. I know I said that last time, but just stay with me. This recording here, from July 14, 2014, and countless others that I have as well, that I'll try to squeeze in, is of course none other than Roblox High School, a role-playing and Hangout game that was created by Cindering in mid-2014. I'm aware that the description says it was from 2009, but we'll get to that later. The game, at the time of writing, currently sits at over 589 million visits, with an insane 2.6 million favorites on top of that. Roblox High School is a definite favorite for many older players, including myself, and I've been very excited to talk about it just like the previous entry. This game and many others like it is what I think when I imagine 2014 Roblox. While the game does have a bit of a mixed reception, which we will again mention at some point, nowadays it's largely remembered for its more positive aspects. This game is truly iconic, and I'm not just saying that for dramatic effect. I guarantee most Roblox players, even new ones, know of this game to an extent. Roblox High School was a staple to many people's childhood on Roblox, seeing how this game was the first introduction to the platform for many. A large majority of which can agree with me when I say this game is largely responsible for some of the best memories on the entire website, from making friends, having fun and interesting roleplays, having parties in the club, shopping at the mall, etc. Now, Roblox High School is exactly what it says on the tin, a role-playing / hangout game set in a high school, believe it or not, and the extensive town surrounding it, which again, I'll explain in detail later. Since it's a game based around a school, you can play as either a student, with roles like freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, etc., or if you want to boss around the students, you can either play as the teacher or the school principal. As the principal, if you owned the Enforcer's Powers Game Pass, you'd gain the ability to both give detention and suspend students, as well as have the power to fire teachers. Map-wise, not only is there, of course, the high school itself, but there's also a dance club called Club Red, an outdoor swimming pool, beach, a large forest with a campsite, and even functional shopping outlets and a mall where players could purchase clothing for their avatars, gears that they could use in-game, as well as many, many more places to explore, hang out, and roleplay in. I've only just scratched the surface of what interesting things you can find in this game, and as I said, I will try to get into more detail later. Interestingly enough, Roblox High School wasn't always known by such. As I mentioned at the start of the segment, the game page on the Roblox website states the game was actually created in 2009. Roblox High School was once under a completely different name and had an entirely different premise altogether. Some of this upcoming info comes from a channel called Cardboard Box, specifically this video here where he discusses the rise and fall of Roblox High School. I definitely recommend giving it a watch after this video if you want to know more, as his video is quite interesting and entertaining. For some very brief history, on April 8th, 2009, a player called Gamer2009, spelled with 3, who we now know today as Cindering, would create the game that would one day become Roblox High School. But long before that, it was actually a football/soccer game called Extreme Soccer Thunder Island. It must have not seen that much popularity, unfortunately, as I'm unable to find any footage of this rendition of the game. I'm assuming Extreme Soccer was similar to what would become Cindering's other game, Super Strike League, as the description sounds a lot like what Super Strike League would become. If anyone can find any footage of Extreme Soccer, please let me know, as I'd love to see it. In August of the same year, the game would be changed into Noob Destruction Facility 3, a continuation of a game series that Gamer2009 made around the same time as Extreme Soccer. Noob Destruction Facility 3 would actually gain some decent popularity, and I was actually able to find footage of it this time. But just like Extreme Soccer before it, the game would end up being completely replaced yet again. Though fortunately, Cindering copied Noob Destruction Facility 3 over to a new place file, but unfortunately, this place file was privated, leaving it inaccessible to this very day. The game that would go on to replace Noob Destruction Facility 3 would be called Roblox Middle School, which was obviously a middle school role-playing game, making it a sort of precursor to what would later become Roblox High School. It had a pretty much identical premise, and from the looks of things, it was popular for the time. Despite the similarities in gameplay and what you could do, Roblox Middle School appears much more differently to what most players nowadays are familiar with. The map of Roblox Middle School was a lot smaller and less detailed. While there were still things outside of the school, such as a few homes and a skate park, it wasn't as extensive as what we have now. The teams were a lot more specific too, with additions like the skater team, staff team, and even an out-of-school team, just to name a few. Teams we know as freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors were originally just referred to as grade numbers instead. Can't say whether I remember playing this version of the game or not, but it existed in the time frame in which I was active on the platform, and seeing that it had some form of popularity, maybe I did play it. I just can't be sure. Unfortunately, Roblox Middle School wouldn't stay popular forever. In its later years of existence, starting around 2012, it began to lose its player base, and even the creator himself grew less fond of the Roblox platform in general. It wouldn't receive much attention from the wider Roblox community, and for a time, it genuinely seemed like the game was nearing its end, especially after the creator stated there would be no more updates. Despite this, there was actually a lot more footage of Roblox Middle School than I was expecting, including this one here from August of 2013 by YouTube user Banana Panda Pancakes. God, such an early 2010s username, in which the user is asking the creator of the game what his plans were for the future of Roblox Middle School. Despite claiming there'd be no more updates, Gamer2009 mentions that he actually has a large update in mind, one that would completely transform the game. In his own words, it would be awesome. Seems as if this wasn't quite the end for Roblox Middle School. That big update would eventually come midway through 2014, specifically on the 26th of June, in which Gamer2009, now going by Cindering, would completely remake Roblox Middle School from the ground up, and rebrand it into what we now know as Roblox High School. The map was completely rebuilt from scratch, the teams were simplified, and there was a lot more things for the players to do. The game, even at this point, was familiar with what we have today, though with slightly less additions, such as the lack of customizable houses, the mall, the beach, etc. This was when my earliest footage of the game, that I can find, was filmed, June 27th, 2014, which was only a day after the update, meaning this was taken during the grand opening. How crazy is that? I'll happily take my Roblox High School veteran discount. With the countless other amounts of footage I captured following this, you could tell I quickly became a fan of the game. As such, this massive change proved to be extremely popular, with the game receiving millions of visits shortly after the update. This sudden surge in popularity allowed Roblox High School to reach the front page on many occasions. Map-wise, the game retained a lot from the previous rendition, including the school of course with its various classrooms, like English, Math, Science, Music, Computer Lab, Art Room where you could actually draw on canvases, a gymnasium, even an auditorium, etc. Outside of the school there was also a large football pitch as well as a skate park. It also introduced several new locations as well, such as a clothing store which actually allowed players to purchase clothing for their avatar, a large outdoor swimming pool, a restaurant, music store, a car dealership, a campsite, and one that I want to go into more detail with, a club. The Club Red, as it was called, was a very popular and iconic hotspot in the game, being a place for players to go to after or sometimes during classes, featuring a DJ stand which allowed players with the DJ pass to play music bought from the Maddie's Music Store, a dance floor, as well as a bar to get drinks. I remember my most fond Roblox High School memories being in this club. A handful of my recordings of this game are entirely situated inside this club in fact, where I'm just listening to music with other players or sometimes just by myself. Mine and perhaps most other players' love for this area of the game was mostly due to there being a wide selection of music that could be played here, most of which being popular songs of the time. These songs could be purchased at the Maddie's Music Store just outside the football pitch. pitch, and with the use of the DJ Game Pass allowed you to play these tracks in the club for other people to listen to. In this video specifically, you can hear the song We Can't Stop by Miley Cyrus, and to this day that song reminds me of this game, and I'm so happy that it does. I also remember there being one song that would play when there was no DJ. It was also Spratch Brooks from the Catherine series of games, the song we have playing in the background right now. Very nostalgic. While we're on the topic of music, Roblox High School actually used to use a lot of copyrighted music. This is of course seen in both Club Red and Maddie's music. Given the dozens of definitely copyrighted audio, this led to Maddie's music being removed sometime in 2017, which also made the DJ booth in Club Red also change to allow custom music IDs from the Roblox developer marketplace, instead of using a selection of hand-picked audio, which is a shame, but it had to be done due to copyright. Now this also extends to the background music as well, a lot of which were actually from the Animal Crossing games. And knowing Nintendo, you could probably guess why this led to most of the songs in the game being replaced with some original audio made by Kyle Allen in 2017, which later became their own iconic staples of the game. Tracks like Back to School, Afternoon Classes, ZZZ, just to name a few. I've included some in the background of this segment in fact, and you may have heard some if you were listening closely. I will be linking a video of all these songs in it for you to listen to. I guarantee you'll recognize a few tracks, even if you're not a big Roblox High School fan. Roblox games having their own soundtracks was really rare, and while I doubt this was the first game to have such, this was still a very unique thing and showed how popular and serious the platform was becoming. Back to where we were. As 2014 came to an end, Roblox High School was still as popular as ever, becoming one of the most popular games on the entire platform. Thanks to its popularity, the game continued to receive numerous updates with plenty of new features, such as customizable houses. Beforehand, players were only able to buy apartments to stay in between school days, but this update allowed players to own their own houses which they could customize with different paint colors and props. In 2015, a mall was added to replace the clothing store. I always remember avoiding this the most because of the amount of lag that happened when you'd entered it. Obviously this doesn't affect me nowadays. The map was also extended around this time, adding a beach which, if I remember correctly, wasn't always visited much outside of field trips the principal would hold. Still a very relaxing sort of area though. A gear and pet shop were added as well, replacing a memoir park that was there prior. These stores, fairly self-explanatory, allowed users to buy both pets that would follow the player, like my Doge here, and various gears, most of which being ways of getting around, like scooters, hoverboards, magic carpets, among others. Also in 2015, the car dealership, Larry's Cars, was replaced with a UI button to buy cars directly. This actually caused a lot of players to start worrying about Larry, the NPC who ran the dealership. In response to this, a donation board was added to help Larry build a new home. As a thank you gift, Larry would personally give out one advent gift every day during the game's Christmas event. Larry's home still stands to this day, where you can find him happily retired. Roblox High School had tie-ins with seasonal events that year. For example, the 2015 Roblox Summer Camp event turned all the apartments into log cabins and had players hunt for a future worm hat. What is this thing? I was actually able to find a build of this version of the game, though nothing works and there's zero scripting. Still a very cool find. The Roblox Holiday 2015 event gave the map a festive makeover, also allowed players to collect Alvin the Chipmunk for the Alvin the Chipmunks The Road Chip film, which this event had a promotion with, for some reason. Speaking of promotional events, the game had a tie-in with the Big Hero 6 event, which added advertisements for the film around the map. If players were able to find and collect 3 of Baymax's hidden parts throughout the map, they would be rewarded his head. One thing I didn't really think about or mention in the last entry was how cool it felt to see my favorite niche video game at the time get attention from big corporations like Disney. While the ones I've mentioned weren't the first sponsored events, that goes to the Disney XD event in 2010, it still felt really cool to have Roblox get more and more recognition from the wider public. In 2016, this was around the time YouTubers like The Pals and Ethan Gamer picked up on the game, making it even more popular among Roblox players. This year also saw Roblox High School taking place in the Imagination event from earlier, where players needed to make a painting in the art class in order to find a floating thingamajig, that was actually what it's called, as well as the Fruity Pebbles spoon, achieved after attending 10 classes in a row. Moving on, to me, Roblox High School was definitely one of the most memorable parts of my time in earlier Roblox, and specifically 2014. The game just felt so open and there was tons of places to explore and people to meet, whether it was role-playing with friends or strangers, exploring a map, or just messing around. It was actually a game I'd look forward to playing on many occasions. I really had the freedom to be whoever I wanted to be in game. I could just be a regular student, club goer, and for some reason in this clip, here I'm being a master hacker, hacking into the school network or whatever, to hack people's bank accounts? What? Shortly after this, I lose connection to the game. My hack must have worked. That freedom to create my own story and character was what got me into Roblox in the first place, and this new Roblox high school game felt like the perfect playground for that. It was almost like a glimpse into what I thought high school might be like. At the time, I was just a kid, and this was literally right before I moved up to high school myself. This game kinda let me imagine what it was going to be like, without worrying about the stress of actually moving up into another school. As silly as it sounds. Now, unfortunately, the one major issue that many players are familiar with in this game was of course the abundance of online daters, odors, once more, which was, and unfortunately still is, a huge problem in many Roblox games. The odors would usually congregate to more of the social areas of the game, like the club and the outdoor swimming pool, making them hard to avoid in most cases. What didn't help this issue is that again, the wider Roblox community as a whole criticized the platform's moderation team, as they weren't dealing with the issue effectively enough. I remember this issue especially affecting Roblox High School, giving the game a bad reputation among some of the more critical players. As we've seen in recent times, this is still a massive problem on Roblox, but that's a topic for another day. As a contrast, the odors brought with them a huge trolling culture to the game, a sort of a way to fight back against the odors, if you will. There are plenty of odor trolling videos on YouTube, and it really became a huge part of the game's culture that even persists to this day. Aside from that, a more minor issue was that a chunk of the player base wouldn't participate in the school roleplay itself, as there was no real saying the players were actually required to do so, sometimes leaving a lot of empty classrooms and otherwise massive servers. But this is a nitpick more than anything, and I'd never really had a problem with it. Another more minor issue was that of abusive principals, who, with the Enforcer's Powers Game Pass, would dish out detentions and suspensions like candy on Halloween. With no real way of preventing them from doing this, a lot of people really had a vendetta against principals in this game. Again, it's more of a funny nitpick, but still thought I'd mention it. In the later years of its life, from 2016 to 17 onwards, Roblox High School, like most of the older games we cover today, became a hotspot for exploiters, especially following the release of its sequel, Roblox High School 2, which we'll talk about in just a moment. In an attempt to combat the exploiters, Cindering added restrictions to the game, such as kicking players with less than 24 hours of playtime from public servers or requiring the purchase of private servers to access. These restrictions were not looked upon favorably by the player base. While it had good intentions, it also killed any chance of the game receiving any new players from experiencing it, which, mixed with the other problems I've mentioned, may have contributed to why the game started to lose popularity near the end of the 2010s. In July of 2018, a sequel to Roblox High School would be released to the public, simply called Roblox High School 2, being an entirely brand new and reimagined remake of the original, set in a town called Starcadia Bay. I remember this game being received well, and I recall really liking it. It's got everything the original had and more, including new and returning locations, interactable lessons, meaning you can actually learn from the subjects, features like fast travel, car upgrades, jobs, an improved avatar editor, and much more. Think of this game as just a fully realized version of the original. It could even work as its own standalone game outside of Roblox, though it would require an entirely new segment to cover in full, so I'll just move on from here. To many, it seemed like this sequel was the final nail in the coffin for the original game, which began to receive less and less attention from both players and the developers. Everything eventually led up to Roblox High School finally being shut down and discontinued in May of 2024. Any attempts of joining the game regardless of playtime would result in an immediate kick, making private servers the only viable way of playing. For some, it seemed like the original Roblox High School was gone for good, and it truly was a sad day for Roblox High School fans, some of which thinking it was the end of an era. That was until July of the same year, however, where thankfully, on the game's 10-year anniversary, due to the copious amounts of backlash regarding the server restrictions and the rise of remakes of the game with poorly moderated communities, Cindering announced that Roblox High School was to be officially fixed and reopened to the public, where it still remains to this day. The reopening day brought back hundreds of players. At one point I recall it getting over 1,000 in fact. Fans, including myself of course, were genuinely happy that this childhood staple has returned, not only with a rise of popularity again, but with proper moderation, bug fixes, and better protection against exploits. Despite all the hype surrounding the reopening now dying down, Roblox High School still gets over 100 players each day, including new players as well, who are experiencing the game for the first time, meaning there's always at least 2 to 3 full servers during peak hours. And while that's nowhere near the same amount of activity got during its prime, that's still incredibly good to see for a legacy game like this on Roblox in current year. Just like before in some of the previous entries, this is actually a game I return to regularly, mostly just to reminisce and to remind myself of a nostalgic game from my childhood. On some occasions I do actually run into other people who are similar to me. It's really nice to share and hear about all the cool stories and memories we've made on this game. It keeps me coming back and it puts a smile on my face every single time. In fact, at some point during the reopening period, I actually met a bunch of players who dressed and acted as if they were in the early 2010s. It was so sick seeing all the outfits, mannerisms, and activities they got up to. It's so cool seeing how aspects from my childhood are still interesting people to this very day. Wherever they are now, I hope they're doing great, as that really made my day. But that leads us on to the next question. What does this mean for the future of the game? And what about Roblox High School 2? Now unfortunately, Cindering announced on November 8th, 2024 that Roblox High School 2 would no longer be receiving any major updates. This is going to be the same for the original as well, citing that it was time for him and his team to move on to new things, which I completely understand. It's hard to keep up a game franchise you've been continuously working on for over a decade. Looking back, Roblox High School, and its many forms over the years, and even its sequel, Roblox High School 2, has provided players like you and I with countless positive and nostalgic memories that we will cherish for years. I'm incredibly grateful to have experienced this game during its prime, as well as the era of Roblox that it's from. While Roblox High School wasn't the first role-playing game on the platform, and certainly won't be the last, it definitely left an impact on Roblox and its community. It really helped define a specific era on the Roblox platform, one that's memorable, a time when the platform was slowly becoming more popular, making the game feel large and open with lots of new people to socialize with, while still feeling niche to an extent, if that makes sense. And while the game's reputation hasn't always been perfect due to the issues like online dating, as I mentioned earlier, it's largely remembered far more positively today for the experiences it gave to players rather than the problems that surrounded it. So thank you, Cindering, and in fact, thank you to every single creator that we've talked about in this video for making my early years on the platform some of the happiest memories of my childhood. With that said, let's wrap things up. And there we have it. If you made it this far, then thank you. Thank you so much. Genuinely. I know this video was long, very long, but I really do appreciate you all for sticking around. I spent a very long time working on this video. I was originally planning on this video being only around an hour in length, but that slowly changed because honestly, I just kept adding games to this video's runtime and it kinda got out of hand. But hell, I'm happy. I really unlocked a lot of memories for myself and I hope I did the same for you guys as well. I do apologize for the length of time it took to make this video. I did start making it in January, and kind of just sat on the idea for a while. I know it's December now, late December. So, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I hope this is like kind of my Christmas present to you guys. You know, Roblox has had a few ups and downs recently that I'm sure most of you are aware of. And if I'm honest, all of that just slowed down my interest in wanting to make this video. I'm also just very lazy. As a long-time player, it almost breaks my heart a little, you know? It didn't feel right to make videos on a platform that's been in so much hot water recently. But the memories I made on the platform and all of my old footage just sitting in storage really pushed me to keep going with this video's production, as I really don't want to keep such things to myself. I want to share my opinions and describe my experiences about it. More than anything, I also hope this video might help you guys remember where the platform came from, and to keep our spirits high while Roblox sorts its shit out. But hey, I got it out in the end, and I genuinely do hope it was worth the wait. As much as I don't want to make any empty promises, I think sticking to shorter form videos, roughly 10 to 30 minutes in length, is definitely the way to go for now. Not saying longer videos like this is entirely off the table, as I still have plenty of games left to cover, but if I'm wanting to make this more consistent, I best come up with a more consistent schedule. I have had a few really good ideas I think you guys would love. In fact, I had an idea while actually making this video, involving all the little rabbit holes that I went down during this video's production. I really wanted to make a small series of sorts that consists of me going down these rabbit holes, not with any particular goal in mind, just seeing what I can find. Again, no promises, it's just an idea. You guys may have noticed that I didn't actually have any live gameplay this time around, as I wanted to focus more on actually finding these games rather than blindly reacting to them. I also thought they added a lot to the video's length, meaning it would have taken even longer to film. If this is a change that you think I shouldn't have made, please let me know. I always think it's awkward filming live gameplay, but I'm willing to do so if it's preferred. Anyways, I guess to really wrap all of this up, and sort of as my conclusion to all of this video wasn't just about revisiting old games for nostalgia's sake. A lot of what we looked at today actually helped shape what Roblox would eventually become. Even the smaller, lesser known games we covered meant something to someone, with so many older experiences becoming harder to access, especially with Roblox's recent changes regarding unrated games visibility. Documenting and talking about them is far more important than ever. These games weren't perfect, and neither is the platform even now, but they meant something to a lot of people, myself included, and I think that history is worth remembering. So, if you've got old Roblox videos, screenshots, or stories just sitting around of a niche game you once played, it's worth cherishing them, and maybe even sharing them with others. Doing so helps us remember where the platform came from, reveals hidden classics that would have otherwise been completely forgotten, and shows why this platform meant so much to so many people. Once more, I'd like to thank Green Lego Cats 123 for helping with the boys and girls hangout segment, and I'd also like to thank Toasted Cherries for the inspiration for this video, just like the previous episode I did. As I've said throughout, all games and even the music I've used will be linked down below in the description for you all to check out yourselves. If there's anything you'd like to see from me in the future, whether that's more Roblox or Roblox history, internet nostalgia, gaming in general, including some of my game development stuff, which I am in fact really eager to share, or maybe some spookier videos, like gaming or internet mysteries, as that's a topic I'm really interested in. Feel free to let me know in the comments, and if you've got any suggestions or questions about this video, or something you think I should have mentioned, or something I should check out, I'm always happy to hear it as well. And finally, thank you all once again for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Also hit that subscribe button for more content like this. I'll see you all in the next video. Have a very safe day.